in place strategies to ensure that no Kenyan is affected.
We are not preparing to respond to the El Niño expected disaster. Rather, we are consolidating and refining coordination strategy for mitigation. Unlike the past, we are saving lives and livelihoods before tragedy strikes.
Already 23 counties in the country have submitted a report on how they are prepared to deal with the effect of the phenomena that comes with floods as well as landslides. According to the chairperson of the Council of Governors, Nakuru, the counties include Kirinyaga, Makueni, Isiolo, Narok, Siaya, Uasin Gishu, among others.
23 counties have submitted those reports, which include Isiolo, Lamu, Nandi, Nyamira, Kisumu, Marsabit, West Pokot, Mandera, Vihiga, Kakamega, Murang'a, Laikipia, Machakos, Bomet, Kiambu, Nakuru, Wajir, Homa Bay, Makueni, Garissa, Busia, Kwale, and Kirinyaga. We are expecting the rest to still be coming because we had actually given them a deadline of this coming week.
The government has expressed their readiness to help students who will be affected by the floods during the national examinations slated to begin soon. Kenya Medical Supplies Agency has been tasked to be in the front line to deliver medicine to hospitals on time.
In the event the Ministry of Education, when they are conducting their exams, some areas will not be accessible. We have our aviation section that is ready. Our equipments are ready.
If we have a river that is flooded and the lakes as well, the others will deliver for you at the headquarters and expect you to take to the last mile. How do we expect KEMSA to give us drugs within less than a week and deliver last mile in the situation we're going to be experiencing at the moment?
Now, as the UDA party is expected to hold its national delegates conference meeting at the Bomas in Nairobi, the affiliated parties in Kenya Kwanza may find themselves at crossroads, with the UDA insisting on the dissolution of the said parties. However, Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi from ANC has strongly opposed the proposal to dissolve affiliated parties and create a single party of the UDA.
My point remains this, that we are a multi-party nation. That is what the Constitution states. And it is important that we have political parties across the board that are dynamic, that meet the aspirations of the people. And this kind of debate is not new. I think what we should be looking for is that as we go forward, how do we strengthen political parties? How do we make them more democratic? And how do we make them more viable? That's the conversation that we should be having.
More than 1,500 members are expected to attend the meeting, with UDA Secretary General Cleophas Malala saying that the conference will involve elected leaders in the party as well as stakeholders from other departments such as IEBC, the main goal being to set plans for the election of party leaders. According to the majority leader in the National Assembly, Kimani Ichung'wah, and chairperson Cecil Mbarire, despite the fact that the party being relatively new, the UDA has continued to grow rapidly, so it is important to set ambitious strategies to maintain it.
Maandalizi yako sawa kabisa. Kesho saa 3 kamili programu yetu itakuwa inaanza na itaongozwa na party leader wetu ambaye atakuwa hapa yeye mwenyewe.
All elected leaders right from the ward level up to the national level that the UDA party wakuwe hapa kesho. It's a very very important meeting ambapo tutaweza kupitisha important issues or resolutions of the council.
As you are all aware, UDA is amongst the youngest parties in this country, and our intention and that of our party leader is to make UDA the most vibrant national movement. That is why this early we are preparing for our party elections to make sure that we further strengthen our party right from the grassroots.
And Interior PS Raymond Molo says the government is still doing all it can to unravel the Shakahola mystery that left more than 400 people dead. Speaking in Malindi, Molo called on Kenyans to be patient, assuring them of justice will be served.
Mwili mingi ilikuwa amekaa kwa makaburi kwa zaidi ya wiki mingi sana, so zimekuwa decomposed, na hiyo imetupatia changamoto. Ingawaje imechukua muda, lakini tuko na hakika that pengine miezi 1 ama 2 ijayo tutakuwa tumemaliza hiyo shughuli. So tunaomba patience kwa wananchi.
This is News. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
The following takes place from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every weekday on Spice FM.
You tune into Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Ramanya.
Amen. Amen.
So 1 hour is over?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It gets over.
Can you imagine
in 20 minutes?
What the big boys have also done?
I'm very proud of myself.
When you understand about partnership in politics, it's like the way marriage is these days. When you're looking for a wife, you're like, oh, maybe you can help me pay for fees as I pay for the rent.
Why should you have a lioness living in your bedroom?
I have to tell you a story. I went for a prayer meeting, which was called for the spouses of candidates for senators and governors. And when I got to the gate, the lady who was the secretary, she refused to. She's telling me, no. Leo tunataka wa mama. Leo ni wa mama. I'm telling her, no. She said, no, sio siku yenu. And I thought, there's a problem here, because if it was a man, but this was a lady.
It will be called First Ladies until you change the name.
3, 2.
Everybody, welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Heri Latifa, Muga, Madam Du, nimesalamia wote sana.
Tumepokea salamu, asante sana.
Hapa Garissa today the weather is very good, only that baridi inatupeleka mbio sana.
Sasa baridi ni degree ngapi hapo?
Hata sijui lakini madam tunakauka sana.
If you want to follow the money trail, you've got to think like a thief to be able to catch that thief.
A slap from a friend is better than a kiss from an enemy. You remember the kiss of Judas Iscariot? Iscariot.
Yes.
He's the one that imetuweka kwa hii mashida yote na mataabu kwa sababu of that kiss. Yet the slap of Jesus Christ when he slapped those guys wenye walikuwa wanauza mboga ndani ya kanisa took them to heaven.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Good morning, and I love your show.
Thank you.
Having come from a Kikuyu radio background, I migrated to Spice because of the content.
I was born in a slum, but somehow I got a break in life. So sometimes when you see the sweating coming out because of the passion and whatever it is, behind the noise, there are people. And we share the same umbilical cord.
It shouldn't be like that. I am so disappointed. We used to tell Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga that he's doing politics of conmanship. And even President Uhuru Kenyatta, serikali hii ndio iko na conmanship ya hali ya juu. You cannot promise people that you reduce tax, then you double.
In politics, there is the issue of trust. For you to turn around and then stab the same people who gave you that trust, there is no other level of dishonesty. Na hii mambo utaona dunia tu.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Good morning. We're at the tail end of the week, finally. And here we are looking at traffic building up already in different parts of the city this Friday morning. We're going to also look at outbound traffic and getting into the weekend and see what that has to offer. It's not looking too bad as you're coming in from the Thika Superhighway. Not right now, at least. Early pickings is what we're going to call it. From the Outer Ring Junction, we have some movement getting out towards the Pangani underpass and then out towards the city. This is all a wait and see kind of thing. Let's see how that opens later on. Are you coming out of Westlands? There's some movement as well as you get towards the expressway exits and entrances. Also coming on Uhuru Highway, nothing much happening right about now. Mombasa Road is looking pretty good. Gong Road also looking fair. You'll be able to get in and out without any issues. Let's see what the morning opens up to be. Talk to us through it on Spice FM KE on X.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair.
Good morning, and how are you doing? It's now 11 minutes after 6 o'clock on Friday, this 29th of September. It's over. This one is done. The month finished, and here we are getting into the final quarter of the year like that. Gafla bin vu, things have happened, and here we are on this Friday. Good morning to you, and welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation in the Situation Room this morning. Myself, Ndu, and C.T. Muga. Good morning.
Good morning.
C.T. Good morning now.
Good morning.
Bearer. How you doing?
I am doing well. And yourself, how are you doing?
I and myself have had a conversation with each other, and we've decided that we're all right. Yeah. We have decided that we are fine.
That is how you decided?
Okay. We've agreed that we are fine. Yep. All right, getting into Friday, getting into the last day of this week, we have some interesting conversations today. The Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Labour and Skills Development will be in the studio this morning from 7 o'clock until 9. Jeffrey Kaituko will be with us today, and we'll be looking at employee optimization. We'll be talking about unemployment reduction in the country and the different things that are being done by Kenya to secure jobs for those who do not have them, and to make sure that the employment index actually does look good. So we'll be having that conversation at 7 o'clock. And then, it being Health Friday, we will be talking to Dr. Maureen Owiti, who is the head of reproductive health at the Kenyatta National Hospital. Postpartum hemorrhage is a thing, and apparently we're being told that it's the leading cause of maternal mortality. I'm not quite sure if it's in the country or in the world, but she will talk to us about that coming in at 9 o'clock. So a number of conversations, and they look like they're top heavy, and they really are. So we're looking at unemployment in the country, which is a big deal, and then we'll be looking at maternal mortality, which is yet another big deal. Okay, this Friday, our guest host is Peter Moshendo. Peter Moshendo is a political analyst, and he's no stranger to the show. He's been here several times, and today we'll be steering these conversations with him. Peter, good morning.
Good morning to you.
How are you?
I'm fine.
We've woken you up at the crack of dawn.
No, I'm easy. My friends will tell you I'm an analyzer.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Ready for the ride?
Yes, I am.
Let's do it. Good morning and karibu sana. All right, so that's what we'll be talking about today. We're going to get into it and say hello to you today as we go through the morning. Wherever you're tuned in from, our live streams are up. Spice FM KE on YouTube and Facebook, and on your dials around the country. Karibuni sana. Let's get into it after we look at the weather, and we'll come back and look at the headlines after we say hello to you. Good morning.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
The man who looks at a beautiful girl and doesn't talk to her will end up serving lunch at her wedding.
Aye, City. Do like that. My father has killed a mouse. Will he fail to kill a man?
Ameua panya.
Small mammal, big mammal.
Mtu atamshinda.
How are we comparison? I mean, you kill a mouse.
What are they saying?
What they're saying is, my father has killed a mouse. Will he fail to kill a man? Name, surprise. Someone's name.
The name surprised you?
No, the name is surprise.
No, what am I saying? I'm from Nigeria, man. I met somebody called I Believe. So your name is I Believe? Yes, my name is I Believe. But that's the short form. I said, excuse me? I said, yes, my name is I Believe. So what's the full name? I believe in the goodness of
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
15 degrees. And partly cloudy conditions in Nairobi this morning, highs of 25, and we'll see lows of 15. It's clear at 13 in Nakuru with highs of 25. We'll come back down to lows of 13. We'll see lows of 16 in a mostly cloudy in Nyeri, highs of 25. And it's clear at 12 in Eldoret, highs of 24, back down to lows of 12. 25 and mostly cloudy in Mombasa, highs of 30 and lows of 24. And at 25, it's cloudy in Malindi. We'll see highs of 30. 29 will be the high in a clear Kisumu, coming down to lows of 19. Kakamega is clear at 18, highs of 28 and lows of 16, and Kampala is cloudy at 28, that will be the high, come down to lows of 18. Dar es Salaam is cloudy at 24 with highs of 30, we'll see lows of 23, and at 11 it's partly cloudy in Johannesburg with highs of 24, we'll see lows of 11. Looking into a cloudy Lagos this morning at 27, highs of 30 and lows of 26, and it's cloudy at 25 in Kinshasa with highs of 34, we'll see lows of 24. 22 and mostly cloudy in a partly cloudy, mostly cloudy Beijing at 22 Friday afternoon, highs of 28 and lows of 19, and we'll see lows of 10 in a mostly cloudy Paris going to highs of 22. London is cloudy at 18 with highs of 20, we'll see lows of 10 and 16, and light rain in New York Thursday night coming into Friday, we'll see highs of 18 and lows of 14.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Good morning. Indeed, the last Friday of September, and here we are. Good morning to everybody at Spice FM, says George Gashoiri. Good morning to you. All right. Don Saba is here, and he says, we shall recap Malawi language. Yes, we shall. Ndu, please sing a song. I don't have a song this morning. If you give me a song, I'll sing it. I'm not quite sure which one I should sing.
You know,
give me a song, I'll sing it now.
I'm not giving you a song. I am going to tell you about the song that has been resonating in my mind. It's just that I don't remember the beginning of the song. I only remember the middle part. And the way you look tonight. That one. Okay.
Someday.
Yes.
When the sky is blue.
That's the one.
And something you.
Yes. And something else.
I'm thinking of you and the way you look tonight.
That one. Yes.
I know the one you're talking about.
Yes.
And it's a beautiful song, isn't it?
Yes.
If somebody sings that song for you, you can be floored, man. Sheesh. A beautiful song, actually, but in fact, I'll go and look for it today.
In the course of the 4 hours, I am sure we'll remember who it is who sang it, and if we don't, we'll look for it.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so there you go, Don. At least you got a little bit this morning, didn't you? All right. Sometimes we say Tawi Zina. All the times we say Ntawi Sonze, and now we say Stopano, meaning in Friday we say Lachisano. Indeed. Thank you, Don. Ricardo Mariera says, good morning, kings and queens. Kitengela is locked. The weekend is here. We recharge our batteries. Happy and blessed weekend to you too, George, my brother. James Sekento says, good morning, tuned in from Kerarapon. The 2000 says, it's Friday. Make some noise. Okay, here we go. Let's make some noise because it is Friday. Happy Friday. Blessed weekend and see you next month. Indeed. Pray for us out here in the States. We're entering that month. Everything here is hailing Lucifer. What are those? Sheesh. October, Halloween, those things. Okay. Good morning, Siti Ndu. Wishing you both a fantastic Friday. And Peter is here as well. Agri Momanyi says, good morning. Siti Muga, is this thing called bipartisan talks taking Kenyans anywhere, or is it something already decided and we're being taken for a ride by the hungry politicians? That's a heavy question at 6:20. Okay, Jimmy Wekasa says, good morning. Joe Mongai says he's tuned in from Washington. Princess, you see now you got the title correct. 1,000 of whatever you want to you. And he has called CT an emperor. The emperor, the champion, the lion, is the year. We can't keep singing about cost of living. Kenyans need to get angry. Okay. Monish Janet said, good morning to Situation Room. Robert Mbogo is also tuned in from Mombasa. Good morning, CT Ndu. Eric in absentia, indeed. He's fine, though. How's the Situation Room temperature this Friday morning? It's about to get hot. Desmond says, good morning. Now, Romeo is asking me if it is a joke that there's employment creation in Kenya. Well, the PS will be here for 2 hours and you can ask him this directly. All right. George Mutoro is tuned in from Kisii Town. He says, my regards to everybody who's sitting in their exams soon. Indeed, those are coming in less than a month. Anthony Onyango says, good morning, Spice family. Brian Otieno is here. Kesh Dani says, good morning, Wiseman CT. The lovely Ndu. You see these titles, I'm liking them. Tuned in from Toronto. Good morning, HQ. King Dave says, bigger than any mountain, bigger than anything. God is bigger than every mountain, and I cannot. Okay, it is true. All right. Daniel says, good morning as well. Good morning. It's beautiful here in Kisaju. Finishing the month in style. Where is Kisaju?
Kisaju should be in Kajiado.
It's in Kajiado County?
It is in Kajiado.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Exactly. Simon Ahago reminds us that song is by Frank Sinatra. It is. And it's called The Way You Look Tonight. And it's a beautiful one, isn't it? John Macau says, good morning. Guys, thank you for joining us today. And let's get these conversations going. Karibuni sana. Okay, CT, we are still in Kenya.
We are definitely still in Kenya. And this is our final day.
In Kenya. Are we going somewhere?
No,
okay, sorry.
I'm right here.
Final day in Kenya.
It's the Proverbs that have come to an end. And it's not an abrupt end. It's just an
end.
Yes. No, you, C.T. Muga, where did you keep those Proverbs?
You also talk to yourself?
Yes, I do.
It's good.
Say, I found it useful.
The problem is if you answer.
Right. I do answer.
See, now that's the problem.
At harvest, you know how good the millet is. At harvest, you know how good the millet is.
Peter, do you?
That one gets me. At harvest, you know how millet is good. Well, let me digest that.
Literally digest the millet.
Yes.
So it's when you're taking it down that you know whether you have good stock or not, but you have to wait. You can't do it in the middle. You have to wait until the end of it, right? And one would hope that what you put in, you will get out.
Yes. It's like with maize. You can actually see signs of the maize cob growing, but it's only when you start unveiling that you may discover that yes, there is a cob with probably 3 grains of maize in.
Right, and it's full. Look full from the outside. It looks full from
the outside because it's covered.
Yeah.
So it's at harvest time when you now want to ensure that you've done you've done justice to whatever it is you had planted. That's when you realize that either you have a good harvest or you do not.
There you go. I found the words to that song and I just must sing the first stanza for you, CT. Someday, when I'm awfully low, when the world is cold, I will feel a glow just thinking of you and the way you look tonight.
It's so lovely.
It's very lovely. It's a very lovely song. Now that I've gotten it out of my system, let's look at the headlines, shall we?
Let's.
On the front page of the Standard this morning, experts, tougher times lie ahead. Well, thank you very much. Specialists are warning that the country will experience economic downturn and are advising government and Kenyans to invest in agriculture and related sectors to ride out the storm. Wallala. All right. Ex-Keb's boss forfeits half his wealth in probe and says, okay, you're looking at me? Just take everything. Just take half of it. Instead of us going into a whole back and forth here, did I not, who did, who didn't? Half, just go so that we can now move on, right? I'm tired. opinion is split on the new KCSE grading, and so these recommendations are going before Parliament, and MPs are saying nope. We are not happy with these things. We've also heard from the Speaker of the National Assembly that he said, look, these things did not come before us as a house, so how about the leader of the majority, Kimani Ichung'wah, take 2 weeks, find out what these guys are all about, and then come back to us, let's have a discussion. But for now, we're not going to talk about it. And at the same time, opinions in the education sector are split as to, do you want students to test on all subjects, or do you want them to now take the grades from the subjects that they are strong in only? It's going to be an interesting one. All right, we did see election ghosts coming alive in the Ruto-Raila talks. Former IEBC commissioners tell of how their lives have been turned upside down after they disputed last year's presidential election, with Chairman Chebukati snubbing the teams, saying it will be betrayal to employees who died as a result of their work. Okay, we'll look at those stories in detail. On the front page of The Nation, 67 MPs to lose seats. Why? What did they do?
They're saying that those 67 constituencies do not meet the population quota as set out in the Constitution. But I find it very outrageous, especially with these headlines, because the Constitution is very clear. Very precise, to the point that there shall be 290 constituencies. So we may lose borderless and what, but whatever we do,
they remain 290.
They remain 290.
Whether there are 3 people or 50,000.
And then there is also provision in that, I think it is Article 89 of the Constitution. If you go to the clause 6 of that article, it is very clear on the requirement. A constituency must not meet the threshold. At least it must be within not more than 40%, not less than 30%. So these things are very well put. And I think for me, this discussion that was brought about by the Legal Committee in Parliament, it is just meant to spark a debate and make border delineations a subject matter in our political state and in our political statutes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We'll look at that story a little bit more in a bit. Maybe you can open that up for us, Kidogo.
Yes.
That's interesting already.
Yeah.
I think when we start looking at these articles in full, I think Peter can take this particular
story
bull by the horns.
Indeed.
Yes.
On the back page of The Nation, last minute rush. Are you surprised? Last minute rush to deal with El Niño. Okay. The NYS will be deployed as a reserve to help mitigate the effects of the flood. We are going to look into that and see exactly how that is going to be done. Okay. Today we have the Nairobian. And they told us that angry kids, why dating a single mom is a death wish. What? Why? Apparently, people are being killed by the children of these single mothers when somebody steps into the relationship who is not their father. And it's a thing. Cases of children being implicated in the death of their mother's lovers are on the rise, leading to warnings by experts that more care needs to go into how parents handle death, divorce or separation and its impact on their loved ones. Ayasiti, look at the headlines that you have. What do you have, Siti?
Well, the Star.
Voila. Okay.
Okay. Siasa in burnt orange, which sometimes masquerades as brown.
Yeah.
Okay? Understanding Rigiji through cocktail party effect. I don't know what on earth they mean by that, but I'm sure we will find out, won't we?
We will.
Is Ruto's Americans... Okay, let me repeat this. Is Ruto America's new point man for Africa? Okay, who was the old point man?
Well, maybe they were focusing on another continent.
Exactly, but on this continent, you say new, there must be an old one, isn't it? But anyway, we shall also look at that in detail. Now, Want server opened. This is a story in the Star. I was forced to flee at night to save my life. Masit. This is a story of former IEBC Commissioner Irene Masit. On Thursday, narrated to the National Dialogue Committee how she fled the country to save her life after caving into grave threats for her life. Okay? It's a story. Cutting expenses. Outrage over the scheme to slash fundings to parties. There's a bit of a noise here. Political parties And why? Because the government has announced plans to relook at the political parties' funding model with a view to scaling it down. Okay? At least that's one thing that's being scaled down, isn't it?
One thing is being scaled down.
I also think that is touching the red lines in our politics.
Yes, it is.
Because if you look at the members of government today, they were very adamant on funding of political parties previously.
Yes, they were.
Because that is what makes political parties grow. I would be happy if you were talking about streamlining what are the requirements of political parties in Kenya rather than funding, because funding is a non-issue to me if you ask. As long as we make it so easy to operate political parties, we will continue having briefcase parties, and they are not helping us. So it would be looking bad on government if they want to scale down funding, because you see, funding is based on so many things. It's based on number of MPs, number of elected leaders, how many people you
and it's very clearly stipulated.
Yes, it's very clearly stipulated. And then the political, if we start amending the Political Parties Act now, we will lose focus on what is of much importance to the Kenyan people.
Actually, they will, because, as you say correctly, streamlining matters that relate to political parties, for instance, even when it comes to the financing, looking for ways of ensuring that it is clear what the monies are intended for and what you can spend it on.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Now, those are the sort of things, if we were to have a discussion about, one could see. But if there's a general discussion about just reducing it,
it doesn't matter. Because like right now, if you look at how the Auditor General audits political parties, there is a lot of grey areas in matters auditing how political parties should be audited. Those are the things that we should be discussing.
Because what are they auditing really?
Yes.
Is there a clear outline as to what it is that they should be looking for? And that can only be if it is already stated that these funds that are given to political parties should be used for.
Yes.
Like, when the Auditor General flags spendings of counties and national government, it's because there's clarity as to what the funds are intended for.
They're intended for. Like I've seen, say like UDA, look at parties like maybe ODM.
Yes.
These parties, even after election, you see them continuing to have meetings after meetings, meeting members on the grassroots, because this money is intended for that
precisely
purpose. It is intended to train people on advocacy. It's intended to train people on the importance of participating in electioneering. Those things. It was never intended for some few people to sit in big hotels in Mombasa and other places.
Don't forget
those days. So let's talk about how we streamline how this money is spent at political, because it is not small money. It is not small money.
0.3%. Okay?
Yes.
Of all revenues collected in the country.
We are talking billions of shillings that is going to political parties. So talking about reducing the amount doesn't help us. How do you spend what you have?
Yes. Why Pamoja Bid won 2027 AFCON hosting rights? It's being said the political goodwill of the three East African heads of states immensely contributed to the successful Pamoja Bid on Wednesday that won the rights of Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania to host the 2027 Africa Cup of Nations. This is a good thing.
It's a good thing. I would say one of the best things the president has done. One of the major setbacks for football and soccer in East and Central Africa is the luxury, the inability of leaders and heads of state to actively participate in matters soccer, because these things is about goodwill.
Indeed.
It is South Africa, it is the leadership that made it possible for them to host the World Cup. So it's not even about footballing, because we are spending quite a lot of money on this tournament. And government, with William Ruto accepting to renovate 3 stadiums to international standard and build a new one, that also has contributed. The Football Federation cannot get the money to do these things. There has to be a goodwill from the leadership of any country. And people don't know, one of the quick visits by His Excellency the President to see Nyeri. Remember one Sunday, he quickly went to Eugene.
He just popped over.
That was the discussion that was going on there on how to jointly. So I think that goodwill is okay. the footballing nation, and we must wake up and also support our country. I was at Kasarani the other day when we were playing Southern Sudan, and they beat us. And you could hear Kenyans, we are going home, man. We are being beaten by people who are actually refugees, man.
Let's take a break on that point and take a look at what's happening on the roads with traffic. Coming around to 25 minutes to 7 o'clock, we'll look at these stories more in a bit and more meat on them. Keep it here, 25 to 7.
Good morning, and I love your show.
Thank you.
Having come from a Kikuyu radio background, I migrated to Spice because of the content.
I was born in a slum, but somehow I got a break in life. So sometimes when you see the sweating coming out because of the passion and whatever it is, behind the noise, there are people, and we share the same umbilical cord.
It shouldn't be like that. I am so disappointed. We used to tell Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga that he's doing policy of conmanship, and even President Uhuru Kenyatta, serikali hii ndio iko na conmanship ya hali ya juu. You cannot promise people that you reduce tax, then you double.
In politics, there is the issue of trust. For you to turn around and then stab the same people who gave you that.
Okay, so coming around to closer to traffic hour this morning, and a little bit of movement here and there on the Thika Superhighway. It's going to come in heavy as you're coming towards Survey. That's probably the heaviest that we'll see right about now. And before that, the Githurai area coming towards the Outer Ring Junction, not much happening there. Outer Ring itself is moving. It's coming in from that North Airport Road connection, and we have free flowing traffic all the way through to the Thika Road connection at the junction. Coming out of Westlands, you should be fine. James Kishoro not piling up, at least not just yet. Langata Road looks good. It's Friday. For some reason, Magadi Road is always bumper to bumper coming into Friday morning and then heading out towards Langata Road. So it's one to watch. If you've not left, you might want to do that now. Are you coming off Mombasa Road? You'll be fine. Traffic is going free flowing all the way to the Nyeri Stadium roundabout. It's going to slow down on Uhuru Highway as we get closer to 7, but we're going to keep an eye on that. Let's talk Spice FM KE on X.
Chilled Spice. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
Looking at some of these stories in a little bit more detail. On the front page of the Standard, we've been told that experts are saying tougher times lie ahead. So if we're crying right now, there's a possibility that as we go into the very, very near future, that it's not going to look too pretty. How to get out of a hole. And they're looking at it from a country point of view. First of all, revitalizing agriculture. The sector is the engine of growth, accounting for 21.2% of the GDP, and supporting livelihoods through employment and income generation. 4.8% is the GDP growth of 2022, and that's a drop from 7.6% the previous year. All right, contain inflation is one of the things that they're saying. It is important to contain inflationary pressures through timely and adequate monetary policy action to anchor inflation expectations. Sounds like jargon. We'll be able to look at that in detail. Sustainable debt. Government could pursue fiscal consolidation path to build enough buffers and bring the economy towards sustainable public debt. So right now what they're saying is that the public debt is not sustainable. The repayment and how it's going about is not, you're not going to be able to hold onto that. Diversify export products, pursue diversification of export products, and create a good environment for diaspora remittances to boost foreign exchange reserves. So these are some of the things that they're talking about. When they get to you and I in terms of what you should or should not do, what the state must do to make life bearable for all. And it goes into the details of some of this. Let's look into page 3. The government will need to heavily invest in agriculture. We looked at that. According to the Kenya Institute for Public Policy Research and Analysis, this is KIPRA, which is a new in a new report, said the high cost of food has hit many households hard. It's especially the case for poor Kenyans who, according to Kipra, are now spending at least 60% of their income on buying food as high prices push essentials out of reach. So that's the situation that we're looking at. The things that you would get, basic essentials, are becoming more and more expensive and folks are not able to afford them. It includes enhancing affordable inputs, upscaling irrigated agriculture and adopting climate smart practices. This will revamp the sector's resilience to weather-related shocks and provide fresh impetus for agriculture sector growth. So they're saying those are things that you can do in the mid to long term to make sure that the price of food at least comes down. The high cost of food has been among the drivers of high inflation, which peaked at 9.6% in October last year, beyond the government's upper limit of 7.5%. The inflation rate has since eased to 6.7% in August on account of recent rains and within the government's target of between 2.5 to 7.5%. We look at inflation as the increase in prices of goods and services over time. So they're saying that what government needs to do is invest in agriculture and make sure that there is food in plenty at all times. And what that will do is make it then easier for folks to purchase and not spend such a large amount of their income buying food.
And this is supposed to be achieved how exactly?
By making sure that they do everything they need to make sure that agriculture is vibrant and robust.
And have they said how these things can be granularized so we can understand them bit by bit?
You want to understand it bit by bit?
No, I don't actually. I just want to know whether they have decided to tell us, because it's a conversation that one has heard many, many, many times.
Yeah, they do.
And it joins the queue.
They say that enhancing affordable inputs, so obviously the cost of doing cost of materials, you're looking at fertilizer, you're looking at food for animals. If the very ingredient that you're using for these things is expensive, you're going to have a problem. They talk about upscaling irrigated agriculture, adopting climate smart practices. This will guarantee that your harvest, you see these 3 pellets of maize that we're talking about, so that all your harvest actually makes sense. If you do all these things, what you're making sure you have is a surplus of food in the market, and that it's not going to cost so much, and that people will be able to afford it. So they're saying agriculture is the way to go.
Actually, that's as I was telling City there, we are doing what is called the county aggregation and industrial parks. By the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry under Moses Kuria. And having studied the concept, I can tell you the kind of value chain that will be introduced into the country will make agriculture, number one, a very good business for people to venture into, because you would realize that we have not enticed young people into doing agriculture, which is actually the one that drives this economy. Because if you look at the economies of Africa, we are being rated at number 4. But when you look at our industrialization, we are just down there. So we have a lot of food that is coming. I'll give you an example in Nyandarua. Coming this December, cows will be having pate after pate, because people will cut carrots, cabbages, all the surpluses, because they are perishable, they cannot be kept. They'll be given to animals. That is what happens when there is that. If the El Niño comes, the potatoes, there is an influx of potatoes in the market and they become cheaper. But because you can keep them for a very long time, you end up getting a lot of harvest being lost. So what do county aggregation and industrial parks do? One of the requirements that will be in those industrial parks are cold rooms, to be able to preserve the produces that do not have long shelf life. Number 2, there will be light industries that is going to aggregate and add value to things that can perish. For instance, when you do avocados in Kisii, most of them never find their way to Mombasa because they cannot survive the entire trip. They will perish. Yeah. But when you aggregate them and add value and make something out of it, you are able now to package it and give it a long life. in those industrial parks, and therefore you will ensure that there is nothing that is lost. Whatever is consumed in Kisii is consumed. Whatever can find itself into the export market goes, and what cannot make to the export market and cannot be consumed at Kisii, the point of source, it is added value to be able to be taken to the market.
Yeah.
You know,
yes,
what you're saying is beautiful.
Yes.
I've read it, I've heard of it, I've even had occasion to listen to people debating it.
Yes.
It's in the future.
Yes.
It's in the future.
Yes.
As is the nature of most things in the future, it is good. Right now, the avocados you're speaking of are being produced. Right now, as you say, farmers in Nyandarua will overharvest now. There are people in this country, when Nyandarua farmers have a glut of what they produce, will have nothing. It always happens, and this year is not going to be an exception. There exists right now companies and organizations that have not just cold storage, but smart containers that can act as storage because they can be refrigerated. Meaning, you don't only just keep your produce. There's enough technology within those containers to even tell you what is there, the weight, the perishable that you're speaking of. With such an innovation, those avocados can leave Kisii and go to Mombasa.
But you know, this is the problem, City.
Yes.
These are private investments. Listen, they will come and they will buy your avocados at the throwaway price.
I actually wasn't going there.
Yes.
I'm talking about the existence of the technology.
Yes.
And the need for government. Government gets into PPPs with buildings.
That's what I'm telling you.
Now, in agriculture,
yes,
the technology to ensure that these things happen, why doesn't the government plug into it?
That's what I'm telling you. The government is already doing that. It is not actually in the future.
Give me an example of where.
No, what I'm telling you is when you look at the private sectors that are doing it today. An avocado from Kenya, if you go to Amsterdam, you will buy one avocado at about 350
about 400,
to 400 shillings.
Yeah.
So there is no way private sector will enter into agreement with government. They want to go to Kisii, buy that avocado at 2 shillings. So this is what the government is doing. We started with Busia. The Busia County Aggregation Park that has a code room that a contract. Today, as I'm talking to you, 22 contracts are already awarded for 22 counties, which are deliverable in 9 months.
Peter, the point I'm making is a simple one.
Yes.
The government doesn't innovate or create technology.
Yes.
The government adopts technology.
Yes.
When they talk about giving schools computers, we don't manufacture computers. We get them from somewhere.
Yes.
Right.
It is that same principle that I'm saying. Is agriculture devolved?
Agriculture is a devolved function.
Precisely.
Yes.
So if all monies come from the national government,
yes,
there is a way in which whatever the private sector has done can benefit the government, national government and county. Not that you allow them to do the business as they do. You can find a way of ensuring that
actually that is the whole concept. City, what we are doing is as a result of a conversation between government and private sectors. Private sector, they say, create these industrial parks and aggregation centers, and then after they do, actually in March of next year, we are having what we call an investment conference in Nairobi, bringing about investors from 200 different nations and 47 county governments. So that if you walk to Trans Nzoia County, the main aggregation will be about maize. Because it does not make sense for a truck to leave Trans Nzoia with maize to Mombasa Miras and another one to leave Mombasa Miras with flat to Trans Nzoia. It does not make sense.
Sure. I think what we're getting at here is that unfortunately, while this is happening and there's a talk of exports outside the country, that there are people in the country that could also benefit from this food at a later date, and that is not happening because mechanisms have not been put in place to ensure that food can be stored, that food can be kept cold, so that you preserve it in order for people in other. Actually, I want us to go and look at some other stories, but I think this is the point here, that there's a divide whereby we're pushing for commercial business, which is very, very good, but on the other side, there are people who are hungry.
Actually,
in the country today?
Because the 47 counties, each is going to have an aggregation and industrial parks. This is what they have done. They have created a system where one county will know what is in the another county's aggregation. For instance, if there is a surplus of potatoes in Nyandarua, there is someone in Turkana who cannot access potatoes and they will need
or
those
food
potatoes
at all. Yeah.
or food at all. So this food, before you actually export this food, because the people in Turkana, people make a mistake of thinking that they are so poor they don't have money to buy. Some they do, but they have no access to buy that food.
Okay.
So one of the biggest responsibility of county aggregation and industrial parks, it is to ensure that if you are in Mandela, you know where you can access potatoes. You don't need to go to Nyandarua. You just need to log into a system, ask for these potatoes and they will come to you. Somebody in Trans Nzoia, if I want maize, I'll just log in, ask maize from Trans Nzoia and it will come. And the reason why it will come, it is because they know how much maize is available and it is in those industrial parks.
Okay.
So I think I agree with City, there is a gap, but that gap is being addressed as we move on.
Let's see how that opens up. CT, can you give us your let's look at stories that you have.
You know, there was this matter of the money that political parties are supposed to share. What we often read in the papers are just the big parties. You hear UDA, you hear ODM, you hear Jubilee. But actually, this money is divided up between very many other parties. UDA gets 144 million, rather got, okay, as September 2022. ODM 77 million. Jubilee 33.7, Wiper 18, DAPK 7.9, ANC 6.6, NAC Kenya 1.8 million, KANU 5.9 million, MCCP, whatever that is, 3.1 million, TSP, whatever that is, got 2.6 million, Devolution Empowerment Party got 3.4 million.
There's a Devolution Empowerment Party?
Yes.
Nice.
PIC. There's a party called PIC. It costs 106,000 shillings. KNC got 463,000. DP got 1.3 million. PNU got 1.1 million. KSC got 304,000. Ford Kenya got 6.4 million. Progressive Party of Kenya got 788,000. Maendeleo Democratic Party 145. So this money actually goes to very many parties. And there is a big hoo-ha about it. People are saying no. Anyway, we shall see, won't we?
No, if you don't work for your party to get elected leaders and participate in the civil, those civil education and what have you, why do you want the money?
Because
it is not being given on a silver platter. If ODM, for instance, has gotten the money, they have worked. they have worked with the psychology of Kenyans to give them elective leaders that equal. So these small parties, and I say, they should be extinct. If your party cannot even amass
they should be extinct or they should be closed.
No, they should. Which is the best thing to?
We should shut them down.
The word, not even actually. They should naturally die when we put laws that do not. Because these political parties, some of them are just there for the purpose of skimming money out of international organizations, skimming money out of government, blackmailing government into this. They should, if it's a political party, it should be a national outfit. It is not a tribal party that cannot leave Kiambu County, a party that cannot leave Turkana County. It should be a party that represents the face of Kenya. I can sit in an executive committee with someone from Mandela and someone from Kware or Tana River because it is a party that is representing the interest of a nation. But what we have is tribal cabals coming together and forming small political parties that do not amount to anything.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So the rain will start beating us.
Yes, it will, because we keep. Look at South Africa. Look at
Tanzania,
CCM, ANC. These parties have existed since independence, not because they have had the best principles of governing, but because they have represented the unity of a nation. Yes.
Let's look at another kind of rain. Last minute rush to deal with El Niño is what we're being told today. The national government has embarked on a last minute rush to mobilize resources to prepare for El Niño rains. No time like the present, because El Niño is already here. Even as it emerged that the cabinet and ministries still lack substantial budgets for disaster management, the Auditor General weighed in on this and said, look, you know what, we're unprepared. But nevertheless, government officials yesterday reassured Kenyans that adequate plans were in place to prepare for the expected abnormal rains. One of the key components of the government strategy, according to Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, was the sharing of information gathered by early warning systems among response teams. So, that's one of the ways we're going to be able to sort this thing, that we've gotten this information, we shall pass on to CT headquarters. We'll tell Peter Mushendu and his people, this is what you need to do. That is one of the ways we'll be able to mitigate. He was speaking during a meeting that brought together some various stakeholders to compare notes for better response and mitigation in the event of an emergency, but also to agree on the execution of roles and responsibilities during and beyond El Niño. County governments estimate that they need an emergency budget of 15 billion shillings. Are you hearing?
Yes.
15 billion.
Yes.
To sort out this El Niño guy. However, the National Treasury had asked the cabinet and government agencies to harmonize their budgets, realigning and reallocating resources as necessary. He's basically said, look with what you have, see what we can move here and there. This is an emergency. Let's see how we can deal with it. The EACC has warned that emergency funds are likely to be stolen, as was the case with COVID-19 emergency funds. So here you must be careful. And they've warned against the theft of funds. The DP urged districts to come up with realistic budgets. Don't just stick your finger in the air after licking it and say, I think that 15 billion shillings works.
I think that if the accounting officers of government state departments can come together with the CS of Treasury and look at the what you call the currency expenditure, they can be able to save enough money from there. I believe the 15 billion shillings might sound as if it's a lot of money, but with cooperation from NGOs, things like Red Cross, and of course, and I insist, that money should come from the currency expenditure of government. Because as I said here, and I will repeat this again, there is no justifiable reason why a CS of government should work with 7-8 guzzlers. Because those guzzlers, they come with drivers, they come with fuel, they come with a lot of things. Yes, and we can also cut on other than maybe the president as the head of state, we can cut a lot of foreign travels for government dignitaries.
You would be able to
because
find
because let me tell you, if you want me to give you 100 shillings to deal with an emergency, show me that you have saved 300 shillings.
No, show me that you have a strategy.
Or you have a strategy of investing it.
Peter, right now, there is no disaster emergency outfit that has been set up. It does not exist. So every time something like this comes about, people are scrambling, putting together money, saying the counties, and you don't have one central organization that has been given the mandate to do this. It has been suggested, it's been talked about year after year. Drought came, mitigation again. Now El Niño is coming, mitigation again. COVID came, mitigation again. How about you set it up and give it the mandate to deal with this thing?
I'll tell you.
And then people don't have to start scrambling.
I'll tell you two things that are affecting us as a nation and as Africa.
Just tell us one, because our time is running out.
It is because we do not plan ourselves well.
This is exactly what I'm saying.
And number two, we also are victims of what is called climate change, with the big nations not actually giving us the cash and they are emitting carbons, because this El Niño and these droughts are brought about by climate change. So plan ourselves well, and then put our case and stamp our feet on the international community that this is as a result of you polluting the world.
Okay.
You must take charge.
We're getting to 7 o'clock, and Assist Tea is going to help us serve the tea after 7 when we think about great value that's offered in varieties of teas from the Kiptagich tea estates of Kurusoi South, giving us very many flavors: masala, lemon, black tea, purple tea, hibiscus tea. You think about it, any blend, you'll get it. It's produced and manufactured here in Kenya and also ready for the world export. Just as good as you get it around the world is as good as you get it here. Assist Tea is serving it up after 7.
Spice up your life.
Good morning, this is News. I am Dennis Aseto. President William Ruto says Kenya's move to a digital space that's driving our policy, programs and agenda after understanding how technology matters. Speaking at the IBS Research Africa Lab 10th anniversary at Catholic University, Ruto said a good example is how we moved our analog data to the digital space across various sectors, adding that he was set to launch the digital ID next week.
We have transited over 10,000 government services onto the digital platform, something that many people did not imagine. Just 8 months ago, we had only 320 government services. Today, we have 10,000, and next week, I will be launching the digital ID that will make it possible for Kenyans across our country to be digitally identified and to be able to access government services using their digital identity.
Ruto further said that technology had contributed greatly to the agricultural sector by dealing with middlemen who contributed to losses to both the government and farmers.
We supplied our fertilizer using an e-forger. Many people did not believe that this was doable. We had problems with brokers and middlemen and crooks that stole our fertilizer. But because of technology, this year we didn't have a single loss to our farmers. Our farmers had access to their fertilizer, and we intend to buy their produce again using a digital platform.
Kalenjin and the Kikuyu have the highest number of uniformed officers in the Kenya Prison Service. The report tabled before Parliamentary Committee by Interior CS Kithure Kindiki shows that both Kalenjin and Kikuyus take up a lion's share of 5,723 and 5,335 respectively. Kindiki, however, said that the service is striving towards ensuring ethnic equality.
Current number of uniform officers in the Kenya Prison Service, and the members have the copies on page 2, the first table. The only comment I can make there, we do not have a Kenyan community with 0. Kenyan European, you have 1, and then Kenyan Arab, we have 2, and then the rest are provided. With regard to uniform officers, in terms of age, 20 years we have 72, 21 years 194, 63 years we have 1 person, 61 years we have 4 people, 59 years we have 301, meaning they should be retiring in the last 1 year.
Former IEBC Commissioners Irene Masit and Juliana Cherera say they fled from the country after elections due to security reasons. Appearing before the National Dialogue Committee, Masit said that she'd even been rejected at home, which is at Rift Valley, as people say that she had betrayed the president.
I've never stepped in my home since that time. I've never even gone beyond Nairobi. That time, I got calls, people telling me to drop the case. What am I doing? So many things. But I believe it's my constitutional right because I know what I did and what I didn't do. So it is because of security reasons. I'm out of the country and we're not doing even well because even the salaries we had, they were stopped. So we are living at the mercy of people outside.
On her part, Juliana Cherera said what the 4 commissioners went through is not something that they would wish any commissioner to go through, as it affected their families, especially their children.
In my late 40s, I have a young family. My last born is 7 years old. It was bad even in school. Our social life was really thwarted. It was bad for my children. It was bad for my family. And I said some of things, we cannot say them on camera because it is not a safe space to all of us. We've been threatened just because we spoke what we saw and what we know.
The 4, including their colleagues Francis Wanderi and Justice Nyangaya, did not regret the stunt they took to reject the presidential results. Now, as the UDA party is expected to hold its National Delegates Congress meeting at the Bomas in Nairobi, the affiliated parties in the Kenya Kwanzaa may find themselves at a crossroad, with the UDA insisting on the dissolution of those parties. However, Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi from ANC has strongly opposed the proposal to dissolve affiliated parties and create a single party UDA.
My point remains this, that we are a multi-party nation. That is what the Constitution states. And it is important that we have political parties across the board that are dynamic, that meet the aspirations of the people, and this kind of debate is not new. I think what we should be looking for is that as we go forward, how do we strengthen political parties? How do we make them more democratic? And how do we make them more viable? That's the conversation that we should be having.
This is News where I'm Dennis Osset.
Spice FM, Nakuru.
All right, so a few minutes after 7 o'clock, traffic on Jogoo Road. Haven't looked at Jogoo Road for a minute, but it hasn't been causing any issues for the last few days. We're looking at traffic then moving towards Landis, not bumper to bumper in any way. It's busy on the Thika Superhighway, and now we'll see a bumper to bumper situation as you're coming in to Survey. Service lanes will be done at that point. You'll get then towards the Pangani Underpass, and then you can go out towards Murang'a Road, which, by the way, is free all the way through to the Globe Cinema Overpass. And we're looking at movement then coming in from Wangari Maathai. That's going to be busy. Coming out of Westlands, Chiromo, that's also busy. James Gishoro giving towards Waiaki Way, and that then comes out towards the CBD. Langata Road doesn't look too bad right about now. It looks like it's going to flow free for now and then touch on Uhuru Highway at some point. Are you coming off Mombasa Road? You're also all right as you're getting through past Capital Centre and then through towards the Nyeri Stadium roundabout. Okay, traffic hour. We'll be in it in a short while, but this is what it looks like for now this Friday morning. We want to keep things moving. Help us do that. Talk to us about where you might be stuck or where you find a good route. Spice FM, KE on X.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to...
This last Friday of September 2023, and we get into the second hour of Kenya's biggest conversation. The hot seat is already occupied this morning as we get into a Labour conversation. And as you're up and early, let's get you up and early into registering for Kenya's largest single-day athletics event. It's back this year, and it's its 20th edition. It's the Standard Chartered Nairobi Marathon. Join all of us at the Uhuru Gardens on Sunday, the 29th of October, as we celebrate 20 years running. Register for 2,000 shillings today at www.nairobimarathon.com. Remember that all proceeds go towards the Future Makers program, which helps young people, especially girls and people living with disability, to learn, earn, and grow. Do it today. Let's get running and help folks as well as we help ourselves. All right. Welcome to our audiences on KTN Home. Thanks for joining us this morning. And we're getting into it. Nduoko C.T. Muga here with you this morning. And our guest host for the day is governance analyst Peter Mushendu as we steer conversations this morning. The PS in the Labour and Skills Development Ministry is here with us this morning. Jeffrey Kaituko, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here, and welcome to the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Thank you.
No pressure. We're already told that you're the top earner of the country. Your area, top earner for the country at now. Mm-hmm. So no pressure. We're going to ask you how you've done that and how you intend to.
She has said no pressure 3 times.
Yeah, I'm just
pressure in itself.
laying ground for that. So as you get comfortable, CT always welcomes everybody with a proverb.
Yes. Proverbs for the whole of this week have come from a country that is well known for many things. Its wildlife, for its athletes, for its delightful beaches, and for its resilient and very, very, very industrious people.
Oh.
Do you have an idea which country that is?
Of course, Kenya.
Spoken like a true Kenyan.
Yes.
Yes, our proverbs for the whole of this week have been from Kenya and still are. At harvest, you know how good the millet is.
At harvest, you know how good the millet is.
Yes.
Juana P.S., what do you make of that?
My understanding of, first and foremost, let me thank the wise man, because proverbs are from wise people.
Indeed.
For sharing with us that proverb. But my understanding of it is that you can only know how good something is when you see the results. Yes, that's my understanding of it.
But you have to wait, eh?
You have to wait.
You have to wait.
Yes.
Results usually take a bit of time, don't they?
Yeah, that's certainly.
Yeah. Results take some time. If we jump into it, again, we're looking at the area under which you serve as permanent secretary, already being seen as the top earner in the country. That didn't take a lot of time, and according to what we're being told, we're already seeing the results. You don't have to wait for it like they do for the ear of millet, but we're already seeing that, and we're very interested in how that has come about. And when we talk about this area being the top earner, what exactly does that mean? So walk us through the journey over the last 1 year. What has happened when we're talking about labor migration, when we're talking about unemployment in the country, when we're talking about looking for jobs outside the country for Kenyans? Give us an overview of what your department has handled in the last 12 months.
Thank you very much. And I think this is a very important conversation, given the importance of what we're discussing about. What I would say is that the labor migration phenomenon is not really something that has been brought about by government. There are global forces which drive this phenomenon. The Kenyan people, for a long time, have been moving to other parts of the world, particularly in search of educational opportunities, not necessarily for jobs. So for many years, our diaspora consisted of Kenyans who went to the US, to the UK, and to other countries to study. And they remained behind to pursue education opportunities, and some of them chose to settle down in those countries. And this came about in the 90s and later when the economy wasn't doing well. But then what happened recently? And then the other dynamics came in, like globalization, technology, demographics, particularly in the West, because in the West there is a phenomenon of aging population and low birth rates. So for that reason, or rather for those reasons, we now had a situation where many Kenyans preferred going to those countries, or those who are already there, just to remain behind to get a decent living or to make a decent living. Now, last year, based on the numbers that were shared by the Central Bank of Kenya, diaspora remittances overtook coffee, tea, and tourism, which for a long time were our top foreign exchange earners. You know, when Kenyans in the diaspora send money back home, they do that in the form of either dollars or British pound or euros. And then back home here, it's converted into Kenya shillings. And so last year, I think we earned about $500 million. 500 billion.
Billion, yes.
Yeah. Dollars. And then we now want to take that to a trillion. Now, the Kenya Kwanza administration, out of realization of the importance of this particular sector, decided to take charge of this space. Labor migration that government controlled was the one for Kenyans who are going to the Middle East. That is our traditional market.
Yeah.
That is the Gulf countries. And mainly the people who are going there were domestic workers. And when we came into office, there were a lot of problems in a number of countries where Kenyans who either worked as domestic workers or who had gone there before to work underwent some form of abuse. Some even died. And so there was an urgent need to regulate that space. So in the last 9 months, what the administration has basically done is, one, to strengthen the regulatory framework.
Okay.
We've come up with a policy, which is now before Parliament. It is called Sessional Paper Number 5 of 2023. And I think the Labour Committee is currently conducting public participation. Secondly, there is a bill which has been drafted, and it is now undergoing public participation. It's not yet gone to Cabinet for approval and thereafter transmission to Parliament. The whole purpose of doing the bill is so that we strengthen the governance of labor migration. Remember, the laws that we are using currently are the 5 labor laws of 2007. And you all know that since 2007, a lot has happened. A new constitution in Kenya, which these laws haven't been aligned to. And then also there are global forces that I mentioned earlier on that have somehow driven this phenomenon. So then you have private recruitment agents who actually do the scoping and the recruitment. And in many instances, we dealt with fake agents who actually were involved in human trafficking. And so Kenya today, as we speak, is considered to be in the red zone because it's been a source, a transit point, and a destination of human beings who are trafficked.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to manage this situation as a government so that we don't promote human trafficking in the name of labor export. We want labor export to be purely labor export while curbing or combating human trafficking at the same time.
Can I jump in and ask?
Yes, please.
On this point here, I'm interested to know what the policy framework then is going to provide. I mean, even as we continue to look at an overview of what the ministry and specifically this labor mechanism is coming in to achieve. Because if we give a background to what has really been happening with the export of labor from Kenya, is that, as you've alluded to, the situation has been at best terrible, right? Over the years, like you said, people come back dead. People go heavily mistreated. And there have been calls to have this regularized. There have been calls to make sure that there is a framework set up so that at any one time, a Kenyan leaving Kenya to go work, let's use the Middle East, obviously, as a point, because that is what has been happening, specifically countries like Saudi Arabia and the like, that at any one time, the government is aware that there's X number of Kenyans who are working here, and these are the places where they are working, so that an extension of protection then is provided for them, number one, and there is knowledge of your home country in terms of what is happening. I'm curious as to whether this new policy takes all of those things into consideration as it is before Parliament.
Precisely. What has happened is, in January we took a trip to Riyadh. We met our counterparts in the Ministry of Labour there. And there's something that struck me during that trip. I realized that 90% of the problems that we were dealing with there originated back home, here in Nairobi and Mombasa in particular. And so we needed to clean up that particular space. But we could not do that when first the government itself was not well coordinated. Labor migration is carried out by different departments of government. There is foreign, diaspora, labor, immigration, then security. We met the Filipinos, the Philippines ambassador, and he shared with us a very profound concept that they have what is called one country team approach, where for everyone Filipino you see walking, there is a whole government behind him, or there's security, there's labor, there's immigration, there's defense. All these people are facilitating their citizen who is abroad. And you know, Filipinos were 700,000. Kenyans were only 120 officially.
In the Middle East?
No, in Saudi at that time.
Arabia.
But there is a black market, and so those in the in the shadows of society, we actually don't have any numbers from that group. So then, what we factored is, one, to strengthen the coordination within government, so that labor, foreign, immigration, and also security and defense are coordinating the recruitment of Kenyans, and also protecting them when they go to the Middle East in particular, because the Middle East is where protections are needed, and Eastern Europe. Let me flag those areas. Western Europe and North America, well, to some extent, we don't have this kind of cases.
Okay.
There are not very many. So what the policy has done is we have factored in the issue of pre-departure training for those who are going to those countries. We have also insisted that the agencies must undergo mandatory vetting. Initially, when you applied to be a private recruitment agent, all you needed to do was to pay a fee, file the necessary documents, and that is it.
Yeah.
But today, the directors of those particular agencies are required to appear before a multi-agency committee of government to explain a few things, including their finances. We had a case recently, for example, of a very young person, 21, who wanted to be a recruiter. So, and this was a conduit. And also we have cases of foreigners. We don't outlaw foreigners from doing that business.
Yes.
But there's a way in which they need to do it. So currently, therefore, we have ensured that this particular recruiters appear before the committee. And out of that exercise, I will tell you, their numbers have come down. When we came in, there were 900 of them. Today, there are 400. If you want to verify this, you can go to the NAIA website. Because many of them could not meet the requirements.
Okay.
Yes. And this all is meant to ensure that we have safe, orderly, and regular migration of Kenyans to the Middle East and other countries. Because if we get it right with the agencies, then it will be, and also with pre-departure training, it will be easy for them to then recruit people in an ethical manner.
You said there were some issues that you interacted with when you were in Saudi, and that you came to the realization that those issues emanated from Kenya. Can you talk about what those issues were?
Well, I'll tell you what I saw, City. We visited a place called the Sakan. This is where girls who live different houses, who run away. The problem in Saudi is that there are many Kenyans who go there. They were recruited, one by an agent who is not registered and licensed. And then when they are taken there, they realize that they were duped. So they start looking for a better employer. And then there again, you have another group of brokers. They are called the Dalalas. So the Dalalas are actually the ones running the black market. And there are Kenyans like you and me. They speak Swahili or English or Tolu or Kikuyu, and so, or Luya. So they trap these ladies when they get there. And a lot of these young girls, when I saw them in the Sakan, I didn't understand why we allowed them to go there, because many of them were either illiterate or too young. I confronted some of my officers, the female officers who went with me. I said, "Madam, will you employ this girl in Nairobi?" And all of them said no. If you can't employ her in Nairobi, why would you
export her?
Why would you allow that to happen?
Yeah.
Okay. And so I thought then we needed to tighten things here, so that only mature and qualified persons are taken to those countries.
So are we seeing that there is actually a tightening? Because, if we talk about, there's the policy, there's what can be done before Parliament, and there's what you saw as the reality.
Yes.
And then there's also the reality that happens at an airport that is right here. That there are individuals who are escorting these young girls on flights that leave at 2 a.m, and they're leaving in droves. The escort happens to the door of the airport, and then they turn back and they leave, never looking back. They don't know where these girls are going. They don't know where they're going to end up. They just know that they have gone. So the question is, have the screws actually been tightened right at the point of departure here to insist that as they leave, that can an immigration official at the airport actually ask the question, where are you going? To whom are you going to report? What's your job? Should you have all of that documented information before you leave Kenya? Can an immigration official then at this point today make that request? And if the information is not given, then denial then becomes the next thing. Denial of travel then happens.
That is a very, very important point you make. That in fact has been our problem because of one, non-adherence to the laid down procedure by the agents, and then number two is the collusion by law enforcement, including immigration officers. We have had a number of conversations with our colleagues in immigration, and this is why I say that part of our problem was weak and uncoordinated labor migration, because we wanted to be on the same page so that only those migrant workers who have been processed through our system as Ministry of Labor, are tested by Foreign Affairs, are allowed to exit this country. Recently, and you saw the case of Lebanon, because now we are dealing very well with Saudi Arabia. Yeah. Now there's another route called Lebanon. And Lebanon technically is considered to be a country at war. And the agents who have been taking people. So we've written to immigration. Personally, there is that letter, which I did. And then the police. And we requested them to stop any Kenyan migrant worker from going to Lebanon. However, the cure to this is something that we are proposing at the moment, that for you to go out, there should be a document.
Yes.
It may be an electronic in the form of a barcode, or it may be a card, for example. That will be in your documents, which you have to give to the immigration officer. Secondly, we have also requested for a special desk at JKIA and also Moi International Airport in Mombasa, where those migrant workers can be processed. This is the case in the Philippines. The Philippines is actually considered to be the highest standard in terms of labor migration. To be the one that sets the standards there in that area. Yeah. So then, if we get that, if we get an identification, and then immigration officers buy into that, then we'll be able to crack down on this problem together with the police. Yeah.
Can we take a break at this point? And even as we do that and look at one of the trafficking matters that you've spoken about, there's a conference that's happening in Mombasa next week by the judiciary. And they're looking at strengthening conversations and adjudication around dialogue on transnational organized crime and illicit financial flows. And I think this bleeds in very well to that. So that happens from the 3rd to the 5th of October. It's focusing on the role of the courts in the prevention and response to transnational organized crimes and initial financial flows. It's convened by the Kenya Judiciary Academy and its partners. There'll be 21 judges from different African countries here in Kenya, and it's convened by Chief Justice Martha Koome, and it provides a platform for policy leadership to improve transnational justice. During the forum, the training institutes will bring together and talk about the challenges and potential dangers of some of these things that we face, and I think that's interesting because it comes together with what we're talking about this morning. That happens from the 3rd to the 5th of October, and you can watch the conference live online and on TV. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. It's 7:30. The Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Labour is our guest. For the next 1.5 hours, we continue looking at these important issues. Keep it Spice FM. We continue after this.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Revenge is for children. It's for kids. When you grow up, you realize the best revenge you can take on somebody is to ignore them.
Now, I'm just new in politics. It is not everybody's cup of tea. That's why some people come in one term and that's it for them.
Political parties in this country do not have ideologies, whether luring or otherwise.
And that is the effect of corruption.
Any time an offense occurs anywhere in the country, it is the job of the Inspector General to look into it. Whether it's corruption, whether it's murder, whether it's petty, that is his job.
If we have chosen to be a corrupt nation, then we produce corrupt leaders. Everything then becomes chaotic that you cannot be able to change a nation.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
.14 degrees and sunny conditions in Nairobi, highs of 26, and we'll see lows of 14. It's 13 and sunny in Nakuru, highs of 25, and we'll see highs of 24 in a sunny Nyeri, going down to lows of 15. It's sunny at 14 in Eldoret, highs of 24 and lows of 12, and mostly cloudy at 25 in Mombasa with highs of 30 and lows of 24. It's mostly cloudy this morning in Malindi, highs of 30 and lows of 25, and at 19 Kisumu is sunny with highs of 29. 28 will be the high in a sunny Kakamega at 18. It's sunny at 20 in Kampala with highs of 28. Dar es Salaam is cloudy at 26 with highs of 30 and lows of 23. 12 and cloudy in Johannesburg, highs of 24 and lows of 12, and at 25 it's cloudy in Lagos with highs of 30. Kinshasa cloudy at 25 with highs of 34 and lows of 24.
Spice up your life.
All right, getting into the nose of traffic hour right now. Traffic on the Thika Highway is coming in heavy towards Survey, but it's not too crazy right now. We're looking at bumper to bumper as you come past that outer ring junction. Service lanes will help until you get to the drift, and at that dip, you'll just have to go with the flow. Coming on Kiambu Road, there's some movement, but bumper to bumper at some parts as you get towards Muthaiga Square. Coming out of Westlands, we'll see some traffic as you come towards the expressway. Waiyaki Way looks pretty busy, but traffic is flowing. Uhuru Highway is also pretty busy. Your different junctions coming in from the Nyeri Stadium roundabout. You'll get to Lusaka and then Bunyala and then to the Haile Selassie Junction. All of this moving, but you'll get stuck here and there. But for the most part, I think we're fine. We're going to keep an eye on things. Let's talk Spice FM KE on X.
Sugar is spice and everything
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Labour, Jeffrey Kaituko is our guest this hour, and we are looking at a number of things in terms of what has been achieved and the work that's carrying on at the ministry, and just coming off labour migration and how that is working in the country.
You know, every time we have a guest in the studio, we normally ask them to tell us a little bit about themselves. Now, apart from being or having or sitting in the docket you currently sit, you've had a stab at politics, but even before having a stab at politics, you've been someone who's been very, very actively involved in social matters within the communities that you come from. But to put some very delightful icing on it, you actually wrote a book. Now, when someone writes a book, that book tells you more about the person than anything else. Tell us about this book, Getting Things Done, A Key to Exemplary Leadership. What made you think of writing this book? How did it come about?
Thank you very much, CD. This book came about as a result of a challenge that I was given in 2019 when I went back to my alma mater in the US, that is Western Michigan University. I was receiving an award. At that time, I was serving as an advisor to the then Deputy President. And previously, as you mentioned, I had worked for a long time in my home county of Turkana, managing programs, projects, and then finally getting elected as the first speaker between 2013 and 2017. Therefore, that afforded me the opportunity to pioneer the evolution. So this university decided to honor me with this award, which for many years when I was a student there, I never saw many Africans receiving it. So when I went for the ceremony, I was asked to do a speech. And in the course of that speech, one of the professors asked me, now, Geoffrey, you seem to have done very well as a leader, as a person. What are you doing to help other people, especially younger people, to rise, to be either leaders or to succeed in their own right? So I gave a response that, I am in mentorship, I have done this and that. But that triggered something at the back of my mind. So when I came back home, I kept asking people, what do you think that is? How can I be more impactful to particularly younger people and other Kenyans, other Africans, and humanity in general? And so I met a friend who is British but from Uganda. And he told me, Geoffrey, at your age, you can even write 3 books. Your story should be read. So I asked him, how do I do it? And told me it's very easy, let's do it. So this became a project during COVID because there wasn't much work to do. So I started writing just to put down my story, the lessons I've learned in the course of life, and also as a leader, both at the county level and then at the national level. So basically, this is a life story. It's a life book. I'll also consider it a leadership book because I've shared leadership lessons, what I learned during the evolution, leading the MCS. When I came in, you people talked of pressure. There's no pressure you can face in this country like that of being a speaker of MCS.
And why is that?
Because you can be impeached very easily. When we got in city,
They're your bosses.
They're your bosses. They elected you, but the threshold is very high. In between 2013 and 2015, they impeached about 6 speakers, and most of them are individuals who had served as advocates of the High Court of Kenya.
Starting with us from Kiambu.
Yes.
It was the first time.
And the reason being, when you sit here, I've narrated those stories here. When you sit there, this is not a court of law. When you're presiding, this is a political court. So essentially I had to put down this, just one, to inspire, educate, and also share experiences. I realized when I was an advisor, there was no reading material because the advisory practice for presidents, prime ministers is a recent phenomenon in Africa.
Right.
So I thought, let me put in what I think about it now that I had the opportunity to serve for 4 years as an advisor at the presidential level.
Yes. So even as you speak about getting things done, and we're looking at the Ministry of Labour here, and again, looking at you being this ministry being called the top earner of the year. What are we talking about here? Are we talking about because of diaspora remittances, and that's why we see that a lot of money coming in essentially through Kenyans who are abroad working comes back into the country, or are we looking at other things? And if we segue to some of the other matters that we talk about, we heard the president just a couple of days ago talking about, creating jobs for Kenyans to go work outside of the country. You've had many talks with representatives from different countries over the last couple of months, Austria, Belgium, and Germany, looking at opportunities for Kenyans. Does that all make up to this ministry then being the top earner? And then what are the plans going forward?
That is correct. You are spot on. And, I'm inspired by, I think, your home country, where you originally came from. What they get is 2.6 trillion. they are number one when it comes to diaspora remittances because you have a big diaspora.
Right.
Now, what is happening is that there is demand for our labor. Labor, just like any other economic factor, is governed by forces of demand and supply. So most of those Western countries are beginning to experience labor shortages. They no longer have the kind of workforce that is capable of sustaining their developed economies. So they are looking up to developing countries and like Kenya and others where we have a surplus, particularly of skilled labor or people who are highly educated, highly skilled, but have no jobs. So our dilemma as a government is, what do you do? Do you let this person waste away here at home? Or you have the opportunity and the option of facilitating this person to go to another country and be more productive. So remittances is just part of that, but also getting employment opportunities. Today in Kenya, one of the top issues is unemployment. And for a long time, we paid lip service as society, as leaders, to unemployment. But now this is a reality we can no longer run away from as Kenyan people or Africans here. We have to find a solution to unemployment. We have, in a way, we have to do something about it. And so labor migration is one of the strategies we think will be able to assist us in denting that particular problem, in reducing unemployment. Our unemployment is fundamentally a youth bulge.
Yes.
It is different in other countries. But then you have Kenyans here who are trained in hospitality. There are Kenyans who are very good in ICT. There are Kenyans who have other skills. And so we will want those Kenyans, since they are not anyway employed here at home, we'll want them to have opportunities in other countries. When they come back also, there will be skills and technology transfer. It's not just about money only. But then that is why we need to have a robust return and reintegration program, so that when you come back home, you don't just come back and you waste away again. We come back, you get a place where you can be socialized into the community or into the country, and then you get to use your skills that you acquired in another country. We also noted that within Africa, our Kenyan professionals have a niche. Whether you're talking of Southern Africa, Central Africa, West Africa, you find that Kenyans are well regarded. They serve as teachers, lecturers. They are in hospitality industry across the continent, and they are well respected. And so we will want them to encourage them also to pursue those opportunities, those who can. Yes.
It would sound as though then Kenyans essentially who would not be able to find a job here then are being primed for the international market. Does the Ministry of Labour, and then looking at where you're speaking of labour migration, then again prime those who are going through school to be accepted in a local market? So sure, there is the external option, but then it doesn't take away from the problem that is here that causes such a huge bulge when it looks at unemployment. So for looking at solving the unemployment issue here in Kenya, that obviously there is more demand than there is supply when it comes to work and viable work as such. So yes, there's the external option for having people, go out, get jobs. We know also that you can be remote but work, somewhere else through digital platforms. But still doesn't take away the fact that there is a problem here, that there's more on one side than there are on the other side. So what would you say is being done to actually solve that problem? Does the ministry get involved at the education sector where we're saying, you know what, let's not churn out so much of this because we don't have we don't have enough in terms of uptake when they come out on the other side of graduation? What's being done to actually look at that unemployment problem and reduce the percentage?
Yeah, that is very important, because I've also met Kenyans who tell me, Bwana PS, we don't want to go out. We want to remain here at home and make our contribution here. Yes, you can remain here at home if you have the skills that are needed by our local market here. So, and this is now why we need to look at the issue of skills mismatch, because sometimes I think we overtrain in certain areas and undertrain in others. or we train individuals in certain disciplines, and then we are told that these people don't have the kind of skills that are needed. So then this is why we have the skills development component now in our ministry, because of the realization of the fact that skills development in particular is the currency of the modern labor market. So we are having a conversation with the Minister of Education. There is a whole state department for TVET. There is another state department for higher education and also basic education. So we have to adopt a holistic approach where we have to prepare the Kenyan child from the beginning to the end. I recently visited South Korea and I saw how even children were being prepared, how they're being exposed. They have centers, and then schools bring them there, then young people, then middle-aged people, women, different demographic groups. And so here in Kenya, we want to adopt that approach of making young people experience what does it mean to be a doctor, to be an engineer, to be a firefighter, to be a soldier, for example. But we can't do this as labor alone. We must engage with education.
Right. Exactly.
Because they are the source of labor. Yeah, that is what I normally say. The Minister of Education is the source of labor. The Minister of Health is the source of labor. All the institutions and all the other training bodies, including the NYS. And so the issue of skills matching is important, but that has to be done. The training is to be done by the Minister of Education and the institutions they accredit. Our work as labor is therefore to ensure that this particular trainees or graduates have access to the market and have the kind of skills that are needed by the market. And so in preparing them also, we are now engaging with private sector. We want to expand the internship program, the apprenticeship program, which is under the Ministry of Labor, so that we expose our young graduates to different kind of environments, work environments. Yes.
Of recent, we have seen the president going out there and speaking with nations like Germany that we want to provide labor, especially those are coming out of TVET training and what have you. Now that we have already seen Saudi Arabia and other countries speaking of opportunities that Kenyans can go, what is the fast tracking of making sure that our laws are, one, conversant with our constitution, and they are also conversant with the international labor laws, so that if today we export engineers to Germany to work on those car companies, what is the plan? Because as it is right now, the laws that we are using, we have said they are not in concurrent with what the Constitution says, and maybe at times in contravention with some international labor laws. What are we doing to ensure this mass exodus we want to officially now take Kenyans out there? The laws, are we going to protect these Kenyans that we want to export as a government? Leave alone those private arrangements that people do. But here we are now talking government to government agreements. What are we doing to ensure that the Kenyans that may get those opportunities are protected, as well as government being protected by individuals who go there, so that they also don't misrepresent the name of our government?
Yes, that's very good. It's good you've asked that. What we've done is we have sent out bilateral labor agreements, which are frameworks for engagement with other governments, and we are about to enter into negotiations. We've sent out 19 of them to different countries, Germany being one, the other one is Austria. The UK, we have a standing BLA, bilateral labor agreement with the UK, signed in 2021 for the supply of 20,000 nurses. But also the UK has other opportunities. And then we want to improve the existing frameworks in the Middle East. And so bilateral labor agreements are the tool, or rather will be what will govern our government-to-government engagement in this arrangement of exporting migrant workers. Because according to ILO, and also in terms of the experience, countries like Philippines, like India, that are BLS with other nations, their citizens, one, are given preferential treatment when it comes to job opportunities by those other countries. Number two is they are afforded protections by the other government, because this is now a formal arrangement. But also the other arrangement is government to business, where where we as the government of Kenya can contract an MOU with a big company like Microsoft, Google, that's so that we request them to provide opportunities to Kenyans. So that's called government to business. The first one is government to government.
Yep.
And then, of course, there's private government, there is business to business, which is a private sector kind of arrangement. For example, our Chamber of Commerce here in Nairobi, or rather in Kenya, and a sister chapter in another country, you get into it. And, chamber is very important in these things that we are talking about.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, these are frameworks. If we implement them after negotiating and monitor them properly, we should be able to secure opportunities for our citizens, and also we should be able to protect them, because we'll have a guarantee from the other government that we have negotiated with, of them taking care of our citizens. Yes.
Nice.
Okay. Even as we talk about, the streamlining of processes that has happened specifically between Kenya and Saudi Arabia, today there still are some issues in terms of people who've gone to work, and under certain circumstances things have happened. So one of three things happens: they go missing, they are ill, and they have no recourse in terms of treatment to then be able to leave that particular employment and come back to Kenya, or unfortunately they pass on for under whatever circumstances. They've been several. What is the preparation by government today to be able to deal with such a sticky situation in the event that somebody is missing? Can a Kenyan in Kenya come to the Ministry of Labour, using also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? How would a negotiation or how would an intervention work, whereby I come and I say, my person is ill, I cannot get in touch with them, or my person is missing, I cannot find them? What interventions are in place from the ministry level to start to deal with those matters? Because we do have them, and as long as earth is earth, there will be more. How does that happen now in a streamlined manner?
Yes, thank you very much. In the last 9 months, after we visited Saudi Arabia, we were able to put in place a bilateral mechanism between us and the Saudis, and it's been working very well. And I chair that on behalf of Kenya, that team. There is a deputy minister who chairs on behalf of the Ministry of Human Resources and Social Development of Saudi Arabia. And initially when we started, there were bi-weekly meetings. Now they are monthly meetings. Then we were handling too much. And therefore, a lot of those matters that you've mentioned were things that we dealt with and we still deal with. When this is brought to our attention by a family member, by an elected representative, what we do is we engage first through National Employment Authority. We get to know who was the agent who took this person to that country. The agents are bonded. One day they are expected to facilitate the return of a migrant worker.
Okay.
So, and there is money they pay for that to happen. And then, so we trace the employer on the other side through the agent. Secondly, we also use the Ministry of Human Resource and Social Development, that is the Ministry of Labor in that country. And that's and Qatar also, there are a few issues. And so, but let me speak of Saudi. So through that mechanism, we are able to assist our Kenyans. Then there is the Diaspora State Department, which was created by the president to attend to the welfare of Kenyans. So where we do not have the Ministry of Labor officials, like a labor attaché. In Saudi, we have a labor attaché. In Qatar, we have a labor attaché. UAE, we have a labor attaché. Where we have labor attaches, our labor attaches will follow up the cases. Where we don't have labor attaches, the officials from the Diaspora State Department are the ones who we give the information, and it is them who now help with the evacuation or will help with with the Kenyans. If it is one, it is a group. Sometimes it can be a group of 5 Kenyans trapped in another corner of the world.
Right.
Currently, we are dealing with a live issue in Malaysia, okay, of Kenyans who went there and got stuck. So the State Department for Diaspora Affairs, together with Labor, is assisting, and together with Foreign, in bringing back those Kenyans.
Okay.
Yes. So there is a whole government now approach towards assisting Kenyans when we get those cases, either from family members or from members of parliament. We have been able to repatriate a number of bodies of Kenyans who die. Some of them die of natural causes.
Sure.
There are those, who, of course, who die of abuse, and we have asked our counterparts to help us in pursuing the culprits. What I'll tell you is, I think we had abandoned our people for a long time. When you abandon your citizens, there's nothing that stops an employer from abusing them. But when they know that the government is behind these people, they shy away. So a lot of those cases are reducing because now there is this engagement.
Sure.
So
can
employers,
people, so can people come to people who are in Kenya today, who have relatives who are outside the country, still using Saudi Arabia as an example, where do they go? Do they come to the ministry? Is there a reporting center? Who do they go to speak to? Do they go to the office and ask for whomever they can find on the day? Is there a centralized reporting area where people can come to and say, this is my issue, who can deal with it here before, those bilateral conversations begin?
Yes, there was. Initially, we used to refer them to NEA, National Employment Authority, because it is National Employment Authority that is in charge of private recruitment agents, and we still use them to track. But now the president established the Labor Migration Management Department within the ministry, and we have set up a one-stop shop in the Ministry of Labor at the NSSF building.
Okay.
So anybody who has an issue now can come to NSSF, Block C, 7th floor, and report the matter there. The officers seconded to that one-stop shop to deal with those cases. When they bring to my attention, I fast-track it with our ambassador in that country, because we are in contact with them. I also talk to my colleagues in Foreign, and so we are able to get real-time support to our citizens who are stuck, in difficult situations. Another something that is coming up in the bill, which is going to help us, is the Migrant Workers Welfare Fund.
Okay.
And I'll be happy if we can speak briefly to that, because I think lately it's taken a lot of flack. From where I sit, I think people haven't read what this fund is proposed to do. Because we want it to be this fund, once it is enacted, the bill is enacted into law, the fund will come into being. That fund, in our view, is going to be a safety net in terms of making Kenyans who don't have insurance to access medical support, those who don't have air tickets to be able to procure tickets for them, so that we don't have a situation like the one that we have now, where we are solely reliant on an agent, and when an agent decides to hide or to escape, we are left with a difficult situation. Yes.
Let's open up the details of that fund right after we come in after the top of the hour, because we're getting into it just now. We're coming close to 8 o'clock. The Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Labour is our guest, and we continue with these conversations. So there's a fund. It's a welfare fund. There are questions about it. Let's look into it when we come back after this. It continues on Kenya's biggest conversation. It's 8 a.m.
Spice up your life
Good morning, this is Newswire. Dennis Aseto. President William Ruto said Kenya will partner with the private sector to develop the country's digital economy. President Ruto said the government has made a deliberate decision to use technology to develop its policies, programs and agenda in accelerating development. He mentioned the move to ensure that all government services are transferred to the digital system as a sufficient example that technology is now developing the country's economy. Speaking during the 10th anniversary celebrations of the IBM Research Lab Africa at the Catholic University of Eastern Africa, the president said Kenyans can now access 10,000 services online. Immigration's Principal Secretary Julius Bitok says the planned national digital identity rollout will transform the country for the better, urging Kenyans to embrace the initiative. Bitok said that the proposed Maisha number rollout, slated to be officially unveiled Monday, will be critical in enhancing service delivery to Kenyans. He stressed the government's readiness to listen to the views of all stakeholders, including citizens, the private sector and rights organizations, to guarantee the success of the project. And Chief Justice Martha Koome has taken a significant step towards improving the efficiency of the judiciary system with the introduction of new guidelines aimed at expanding and expediting the payment of fines and cash bail. These guidelines address the concerns of court users and harness technology to streamline the process. One notable change is that the processing of payments will now occur in open court, increasing transparency. This move is in line with the judiciary's adoption of technology using the case management system, which enables electronic payment of court fines, fees and deposits. The weatherman's recent forecast showing that the dreaded El Niño rains will start in October has sent the country into panic mode, with the government and other non-state actors moving to put in place emergency measures to forestall a possible humanitarian crisis. But one category of people that is often ignored by any such interventions is the old people in Kenya, most of whom have been abandoned in their homes as their children migrate to towns to find jobs. With the Kenya Housing and Population Census 2019 showing that the number of the country's elderly population has risen to nearly 3 million, fears are that the aging crisis could be causing pressure on families that have to dig deeper to take care of the elderly. Now, the government has set aside 1.1 billion shillings this year to compensate victims of the wildlife conflicts. This is according to Tourism Cabinet Secretary Penina Malonza. Already there are 2,600 claims which have been paid for. Speaking at the University of Embu during the World Tourism Day celebrations, Malonza said the government is committed to ensure the victims are paid before the end of the year. The CS lamented that it has been taking too long to compensate those affected and promised that the matter will be addressed. And police have arrested a 28-year-old woman who is believed to have been involved in the murder of her husband at their home in Kuria West, Migori County. According to Kuria West Sub-County Police Commander Ruben Bett, the suspect, identified as Celestine Gatti, is the prime suspect in the murder of her 32-year-old husband James Omahe, who was killed by 3 armed attackers while he was accessing their home at Masangora location. The police boss said investigations into the matter are still ongoing, but preliminary findings have linked the woman who is detained at Kehanja police station to the killing. And Sports Cabinet Secretary Ababu Namomba has affirmed Kenya's commitment to successfully host the 2027 Africa Cup of Nations jointly with neighbors Tanzania and Uganda. Speaking after arrival from Cairo, Egypt, where the Confederation of African Football gave the 3 East African countries the 2027 AFCON hosting right, Ababu said preparations for the tournament go beyond the infrastructural demands placed by the Continental Football Governing Body. The CS was flanked by Football Kenya Federation Supremo Nick Mwenda, declared that the East African Pamoja bid won on merit and the member states are ready to confirm it through the thorough preparations which will soon commence in earnest. Now, British and Nigerian civil society groups have urged the British government to return funds confiscated from Nigerian politicians James Ibori, a convicted fraudster, to his country in a swift and transparent way so the money can benefit ordinary Nigerians. In a letter to Britain's Home and Foreign Affairs Minister, a coalition of close to 50 NGOs said the long-delayed confiscation process had undermined the strong anti-corruption message sent by Ibori's conviction of a decade ago. A former governor of the oil-producing Delta State in southern Nigeria, Ibori pleaded guilty in a London court in 2012 to 10 counts of fraud and money laundering and was handed a 13-year jail sentence, of which he served about half before going home. This is News Web. Dennis Asada, good morning.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
All right, still busy in most parts of the city. We're looking at traffic still coming in on Huru Highway out towards the CBD. It's busy on Jogo Road. Landis is bumper to bumper. And we're looking at traffic in both directions, in and outbound. As you come out of Westlands, you'll be all right. Chiroma looks busy right about now. And on the Thika Superhighway, not doing too badly. Just past Surveys where we'll see the most of it, then going towards that Pangani underpass. Usual suspects right around now. And also coming in from Langata Road, you'll be fine getting into the city real quick and in a hurry. Nothing's going to slow you down right about now. Be careful regardless. Okay, North Airport Road coming in from Cabanas and then going towards the Outer Ring Junction and then on towards the Eastern Bypass. Also, you'll slow down in some parts, but for most of it, you'll be able to get through without any holdups. So we're getting into it. Let's talk on Spice FM KE on X and keep things moving this Friday.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your
8 o'clock into the third hour of Kenya's biggest conversation this Friday, the 29th of September. And the conversation continues this hour. It's a 2-hour stint with the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Labour, Jeffrey Kaituko. And we've started off talking about the plans, the implementations that the ministry has in place when it comes to labour outside. It will be interesting to look at some of those policies for what is happening inside the country for Kenyans who remain here. Before we get on to that, I want to talk to you a little bit about running. The Standard Chartered Nairobi Marathon comes in on the 29th of October. It's the 20th edition of it. It's a special one because it's been happening for 20 years. And this time, they're saying register now, www.nairobimarathon.com. Why is it so special? Because you're not just running for your health or running to keep moving, but you're also running and contributing towards the Future Makers program. It's a program where it ensures that young people, kind of the ones that we're talking about today, that young people have an opportunity, especially girls and those with disability, to learn, earn and grow. It's Kenya's biggest single-day athletics event. It takes place on the 29th of October. Register today with 2,000 shillings and get ready to run on the 29th. CT had a proverb for us at the beginning of the hour, and here we are again at another hour. Let's remind ourselves of what that is.
Yes, it's actually the same proverb. The proverb hasn't changed with the hour.
No.
Same proverb. At harvest, you know how good the millet is. Yes. Only at harvest. Before then, you can only hazard a guess.
Indeed.
But when you harvest, then you're clear about what it is that you've harvested.
Indeed, some of the things at the ministry, hopefully that the results we'll see will be good ones, and it will not be a kernel of or 3 on a whole ear of millet, but maybe more, isn't it? So,
yes. I think I feel he's the right man to engage him on 2 acts that have been bothering me, that have been abused over the years by the Reba community in the country. One of them is the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 2007. And the other one is the Work Injury Benefit Act. One, the Occupational Safety Health Act has not covered extensively on the the mental health that people are being put under in their working spaces. It has never explicitly talked about mental health. Mental health is turning to be one of the health hazard in the working spaces that is here to be addressed. The other one is the what we call the Work Injury Act. That if you go to litigations today at the courts, there are thousands and thousands of litigations that never comes to conclusion that are based on injuries that have happened in workplaces, and employers, including government, have not honored so many rulings in court in favor of those people who have been injured in the working space. And because those are some of the things that are affecting our workers both here and out there. What are we doing to ensure that one, we address the mental health? I'll tell you, if your daughter goes to Lebanon, and she cannot be traced, you have a double tragedy of her suffering there and mental health that engulfs the parents here. So what are we doing to address those issues? Because they are turning out to be some of the things. I recently was involved in tracing and returning back a young girl from my village. But when she came, we had to commit her into a mental institution because of what she has gone through. It has also affected the parents. These are things that needs to be addressed, and what the minister is doing about them.
Yes, I'm glad you brought up the issue of occupational safety and health, and also Workers' Injury Benefits Act. As I mentioned, these are laws that were made in 2007, and they are now up for review. In the month of April, we visited our sister nation of Tanzania, because we have had problems with the implementation of Occupational Safety, Health and Workers' Injury Benefits Act. It is true what you're saying. Even the court has found it hard to implement WIBA. It's becoming untenable. And this is a conversation that we have to confront.
Yes.
But we need the support of employers in that area of occupational safety and health. In Tanzania, what has happened is that they have modernized their law. They have what is called Occupational Safety, OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Authority. It's an authority. And then there is a workers' compensation fund, which is contributory in nature. It's voluntary, such that employers take care of these things upfront. They don't need to only come in when somebody is injured or when they die. The current system that we have in Kenya is adversarial. And the employers are non-cooperative because they are asked to pay for this, for that. So many will want to run away. And this is the problem we have, and that is why these matters are clogging our court system. We think the system, the one that we have in Tanzania, which is a social insurance kind of system, is better. You have the Workers' Compensation Fund, you make a contribution. Should anything happen to an employee, then the fund takes care of
it.
Okay? And many employers in Tanzania have embraced it. They say, in fact, it saves them a lot of problems. Instead of being stuck in court for a long time with their workers where they get injured or die, this authority and fund are able to assist the workers, are able to compensate the workers and adequately. So then, meaning that we have to urgently overhaul the 2007 Act, the WIBA Act and the OSHA Act. And our proposal is that we have it as one act and then provide for the authority and also for the fund in a form of a social insurance.
The thing that I wonder is, are we then saying if we say we're going to overhaul both the WIBA and the OSHA structures we currently have them, are we saying that what we currently have isn't working at all? Because to overhaul means you are doing away with everything and doing everything that is new. I ask because when you talk about insurance for injuries of workers, many companies take out insurance. The workers are insured against these very things. Now, where then will the insurance industry come in?
You know what would surprise you, and I find it very outrageous?
Yes.
It's even the Industrial Court Act. This is the court that is supposed to adjudicate the matters of workers. It is older than the new constitution. It is an act of 2011, the Industrial Court Act, that sets up the court that deals with the matter. Even the court itself is not in line with our constitution. How then are we able to adjudicate matters and the freedoms that we gave ourselves in 2010 if the court that is supposed to adjudicate the act that establishes this industrial court is for 2011, and it was not really actually fully conversant with the new constitution, because you remember the process of building it was started before the crime of the new constitution. So I think it is a challenge on you as a ministry to streamline this, because these things are happening because there is a vacuum that needs to be adjudicated on.
You see why I asked this question?
Yes.
Consider, we have a health insurance which we sometimes say is not a health insurance, but we call it NHIF, okay? But it is a health insurance. That's what it really is. It serves that purpose. Okay?
Yes, yes.
We've seen it work.
Yes.
I have seen it work.
Yes.
It has encountered some headwinds currently,
yes,
but it doesn't mean it cannot work.
Yes.
So my question is, I'm leaving the argument of the private insurance companies and the schemes aside.
Yes.
Are we saying that this migrant welfare fund, just for instance, is going to work in the same way that something like NHIF works?
We hope not. Having learned from that example.
The example of NHIF is when it worked and how it worked. You see, I'm saying this because not everybody can afford private insurance.
That's correct.
And they still need a safety net. So the issue of a fund that is tied in to some form of insurance, in my mind, makes sense. If only academically, it makes sense.
So how does it work, PS, is the question here.
The fund.
Yes.
The fund will be administered by a board, the one that we are talking about, and that it is expected that it's going to provide relief assistance, legal assistance, and also psychosocial support, what you just talked about, to our migrant workers. That is not currently available. Repatriation of migrant workers in distress, among other things. So this fund it was proposed by our diaspora community. They said that you need to come up with something which is a safety net to support us when we get into trouble or when we face difficulties. And so this is a proposal we have made, and we are asking Kenyans to support. It's purely going to be a contributory fund.
Voluntary?
Voluntary, yes.
But voluntary. It's been proposed by those in the diaspora, and it's voluntary. Have we worked out the details of how exactly it's supposed to work? Or is this a work in progress?
Since it's a bill, it's a proposal.
Yes.
And so it will continue changing, depending with how Kenyans engage with Parliament and also with the ministry. There are a number of proposals which they're making, but of course we borrowed from an example in Bangladesh and an example in the Philippines, countries that have this kind of fund which supports their migrant workers overseas and also when they come back.
Okay. Now, we talk about diaspora remittances. It's the number one foreign exchange earner for the country today. $500 billion dollars is what we looked at, over the last, year. There's a contentious issue that those who are remitting this money to Kenya then will be taxed. And the question is, why and how exactly then is this supposed to play out?
The taxing of
The taxes on remittances.
Okay. Well, the general principle in the new constitution is that we all get taxed. That's just the general principle that we all get taxed as Kenyan citizens.
This principle, where exactly in the constitution would I read it?
If I had a copy of the constitution, I could take you. Yes, I'll be happy to look at it.
Yeah. So essentially what we're saying is that there's no running away from taxes. It doesn't matter where you are. These individuals who work on the other side of the pond taxed where they are. And they're sending this money home for upliftment, for development, etc., etc. But then the contentious issue is that they will then have to be subjected to tax on the money that they sent home for this development. And the rationale for that is what is being questioned. Yeah.
I think... the way I understand it is that the remittances are very important to us as a country. The taxing of remittances, the way it's being proposed and the discussion that is going on, I think was mooted to see to it that there is what remains with the government. Because currently you send your remittances, they go to your family.
Yes.
And then they're taken with, some of it is probably you pay a fee to the service provider who is facilitating you from wherever you are. So I think that proposal will best be answered by Treasury because the proposal comes from there, not Labour. Labour, what we have proposed is the Migrant Workers Welfare Fund.
Yes. Which too has been met by some contention, and why is that?
Because people think it is a tax again.
Is it not?
Not really. It is voluntary. You choose to contribute or not. Yeah, if you have your own arrangement with an insurer, that is okay.
And what is this fund meant to do for migrant workers?
It's meant to be a safety net, I say, to provide assistance, whether it is legal, medical, psychosocial support, any kind of support that they need, which is currently missing in our dealings with our diaspora. There is not really proper and organized manner in which we respond to their issues. So we think this is a better way of addressing their concerns. So
I think the first positive step in that direction was to create a state department that deals with the diaspora, because it cannot then be said that they are left to the vagaries of some other department that has its own mandate. But also, if you look at the manner in which in this country we pamper and treat investors, what the diaspora seems to do is even more than just being simple investors. Because investors may come and may leave, but if you talk about the diaspora exists because this is their country. So everything that they do is not only nestled, but is nestled permanently within the country. So a discussion and an argument about what it is that should be done, or what it is that they would like to see done in order to make their lives better, is something that must be treated with not just a great deal of attention, but must be managed with the speed that it actually deserves.
Bona P.S., even as we look at some of these things, I mean, we look at extensively unemployment matters and looking at the creation of, 1 million positions for Kenyans outside of Kenya. The issues within Kenya still continue to be, and one is looking at then what is the ministry involved in that is going to significantly reduce the percentages of unemployment that we are seeing in the country today. Because even as those who go out for those jobs leave and start to work, there's still a huge number of those who are left in the country who are still looking for gainful employment, who are looking for something to do with the expertise that they've been able to garner in school. So what plans does the ministry have? What plans does the ministry connected to a one government approach have to make sure that we are seeing a reduction in those numbers?
I beg your pardon on the last part of your question.
What is the ministry doing in that one government approach to ensure that the numbers of unemployed that we're seeing who remain in the country, who are not part of the 1 million ambitious plan to see jobs outside of Kenya, who remain in Kenya. The unemployment issue is still a big one. Look at the pictures that we saw, for example, the recruitment of KDF, 350 slots were met by thousands of people at the Embakasi garrison. And we have many, many examples of that when there have been calls for applications. It's a burden and it's a big one. It must sit heavy on your shoulders. We're asking, what is the way forward?
Yes, the way forward is for this economy to work. Agriculture, manufacturing, construction. We have to get those sectors working because they will absorb many, many Kenyans. And then also we are organizing that space so that now we have a website, for example. The private sector, when they advertise, we have requested them to post the adverts in the NEA, National Employment website, because National Employment Authority is a special purpose vehicle that was created by an act of parliament to promote employment for Kenyans. I know many Kenyans are not aware of that. So the NEA has a website, and the employers are expected to post jobs there. Then those Kenyans who are seeking for employment opportunities are supposed to register as job seekers. And then also private recruitment agencies that are licensed are also found there. If you go to the NEA website, you'll see all that. However, what has been lacking is awareness among Kenyans that there's this resource which is available to them for those who are looking for jobs, for companies that want to post vacancies, and also you have these private recruitment agencies that are licensed being listed. So we want to encourage Kenyans to use that resource. The NEA, it's called NEAMIS, because I know many young people are tech savvy. That way they'll be able to access opportunities which are available here. But for us as an economy, we have to ensure that we expand it. And I think this is at the center of the Kenya Kwanza administration better agenda. Bring back this economy to where it will work for every Kenyan.
But appears,
yes,
you are right.
Yes.
The Constitution does empower the government to do exactly what you said. It's actually in Article 209. And if you look at the Finance Act Part 3, it says clearly. In fact, it's a nice, lengthy thing. You can't even miss it. Even if you want to miss it, you can't miss it. It states exactly what the powers that is given to the government and how, well, it's almost limitless, really. There's no cap on the powers that are actually given to the government. So you are spot on.
Thank you very much.
It is
I actually had found it.
Yes.
So you're very right. And I'm glad you carry your constitution with you.
Oh, I do.
Very resourceful man.
Many people stopped reading.
No, I do.
Yes.
I do.
It's a very good document to learn and understand it.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's important for our domestic economy really to work. And this is really something that we all must do, so that now we in Kenya here can deal with normal labor issues because people have jobs.
Right.
It is the economy that creates jobs. One of the things I ask KNBS to do, Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, is to do what the American Department of Labor does. Get us the data. How many jobs has the economy created in the last 1 month? You know, the US, the oil, Dole Department of Labor, what it does most of the times, they publish numbers. The economy expanded by 100,000 jobs. The economy contracted by 50,000 jobs. So that way you know you're creating jobs locally or you are losing jobs. Yes. But also the other thing I wanted to speak to are the BPO jobs, the tech jobs. Remote jobs in particular,
yes,
because there are many Kenyans now who are working in that space. We are partnering with the Ministry of ICT and Digital Economy and ILO to ensure that there are protections that those Kenyans need. There is a bit of organizing also to do there, because there have been situations of exploitation. An employer is overseas, you're doing their work here in Kenya, and then they don't pay you properly. So this gig economy is important to us because of our young people who are tech savvy. who are working for different companies. So that is another frontier for people who are looking for jobs and who have the necessary skills.
Okay. Can we take a break on that point? Let's come back and look at many questions that folks have about domestic work and folks that are being hired, folks that are in their homes, and what their provisions are for protections for them, and what is the minimum requirements coming from the Ministry of Labour once again. Let's take that break and we'll be back. The Employer of the Year Awards are coming up. They're back. It's an initiative of the Federation of Kenya Employers. It seeks to vet organizations which have put people at the core of their business and have implemented policies, systems, and processes that create and sustain enterprise competitiveness, resilient productivity, and improvement alongside industries for identifying, recognizing, and promoting excellence in corporate performance. So you can take and look at how you would be eligible to celebrate these awards. Any FKE member who wishes to be recognized as exercising the best labor practices, and all employers in Kenya, you can join the FKE. The award categories are leadership and governance, corporate performance and productivity, innovation and adaptation to change. The awards take place this year on the 6th of October at the Safari Park Hotel, and you can log on to www.fke-kenya.org to find out how you can sign up. The EYA Awards are supported by Safaricom, GIZ, ILO, BAT, NCBA, and NITA.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
This is one of the hottest show that we can ever miss in the morning, and it's a show that really gives a real situation in the Situation Room.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you guys so much. Nduthai, nice meeting you. Even beautiful in person more than in photos.
Say that again. Character is like pregnancy. You cannot hide it. You know, people hiding here and there, you know, but after 2-3 months, 5 months, now you realize, so that is why the attitude that you were showing us, you're pregnant.
It's like what my grandmother would say, you cannot pickpocket a naked man.
How's that? It's communal, isn't it?
No comment.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
$15 degrees, sunny conditions in Nairobi. We'll see highs of 25, and looking into a sunny Nakuru at 16, highs of 25 as well. It's sunny at 16, going to highs of 25 in Nyeri, and we'll see highs of 25 in Eldoret, where it's sunny at 16. Partly sunny conditions at 25 in Mombasa. We'll see highs of 30 and highs of 30 as well in a sunny Malindi. It's sunny at 23 in Kisumu and sunny at 22 in Kakamega. At 20, it's cloudy in Kampala, highs of 28, and we'll see highs of 30 in a partly sunny Dar es Salaam at 27. It's cloudy at 12 in Johannesburg with highs of 24, and partly cloudy at 25 in Lagos with highs of 30. It's partly sunny at 25 in Kinshasa. It'll go to highs of 34 and lows of 24.
Spice up your life.
Okay, so traffic not doing too badly. It looks like more outbound traffic than anything else this morning. Coming off the Thika Superhighway, we're fine. On Uhuru Highway, getting into the CBD, it'll just be a little bit busy. But then we're looking at some traffic back on the Thika Superhighway. It's still heavy, bumper to bumper, getting into the CBD as you approach Muranga Road, or then going over the Globe Cinema overpass. Are you coming out of Westlands? You're fine. You know that already. You're already in the CBD. And if you're outbound, there'll be a little bit of a holdup as you approach Limuru Road. Okay, so apart from that, I think we're getting through traffic like a breeze this morning, so that's great. Let's keep it that way. Let's see what happens in about half hour or so, and see as we get out of traffic hour what Friday is going to look like. Let's talk on Spice FM KE on X and keep things moving this morning.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Things done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
The Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Labour, Jeffrey Kaituko, has been our guest for the last 2 hours, doing well and keeping it chugging along. We've looked at quite a number of factors, Bwana PS. We've looked at, international work. We've looked at labour laws, looked at unemployment, and asked ourselves, so what's going to happen? And it's clear from what you've said that, look, if we don't get the economy moving, it'll be difficult to create the jobs, and there's certain things that need to happen. All right. But if we look at another side of labour in this country, a huge aspect of that being domestic work, and it has always been a contentious issue. Over time, I don't know that the laws have changed much, but in terms of who you hire in your home and how you work and what protections you provide them, what are the mechanisms for operation that are in place when it does come to domestic work, when it comes to minimum wage, when it comes to protections for people who work at that level? It's a big issue. It has always been. And how is that being sorted out today?
Great. That's an important question. As you know, Kenya is yet to ratify 2 very important conventions. We are in the process of moving the ratification process forward, and the conventions here are C-189, ILO Convention on Domestic Workers, and C-190 on elimination of violence and harassment from the place of work. What I would say is that we haven't been very successful because we do not gotten a lot of cooperation from the employers here at home. And there's a bit of pushback when it comes to domestic workers. We have support from KOTU, but employers in their different forms don't want to have that discussion. But it is an important discussion because we cannot be talking of mistreatment of Kenyans elsewhere, yet here at home we close our eyes to the situation. Even here in Nairobi, for example, domestic workers are underpaid. The minimum wage is for Nairobi is 15,000. For example, you will find many domestic workers in a month will not earn that. And they might probably get 7,000, 6,000. So
that's the reality, isn't it?
Yes. No. Yeah. Even the amount he's mentioning is a great deal of money, and it's far removed from the reality, because this person who earns 15,000 also tends to have a domestic worker. So what do you think they are going to pay their domestic worker?
and this is not a suggestion, Bwana PS. This is not a suggestion. It's okay if you would pay 15,000 as a minimum. You're saying so long as there is a domestic worker in your home who is carrying out these duties, the minimum according to the law, it's a law. It's a law.
Yes.
According to the law, you must pay them 15,000 shillings. Okay. Bwana PS, it's not happening.
Very true. We need the cooperation of employers there, our employers in particular. But also we need to strengthen our enforcement mechanism, because in a situation like this, a labor officer or a labor inspector is supposed to assist that domestic worker or any worker who is facing exploitation at the place of work.
Is that what it is?
Yeah,
is that what we're saying? That if you're not paying domestic workers 15,000 shillings, essentially, they're facing issues of exploitation. And it's a contravention of the law.
Yes, it is, because that's the minimum wage.
Bwana PS.
Yes.
This is a discussion we need to have, honestly.
Yes. What do you think, City?
Well, I'm asking the question, why do you think, we're all laughing here because we all know that most people who have domestic workers will not pay them that 15,000. There are people who pay the 15,000. What is it about the way we view domestic workers and the way and what we assume their role to be, and how it is we relate this to what we think we should pay them? Because it isn't ability. Ability is not the problem. It is an issue at some point, given what you earn, but it is our whole perception of this cadre of worker. We all understand, and we even verbalize what we consider to be the important role they play, especially for people who have young children. Okay? But we do not apply a commensurate reward system for the importance that we place on what we say, or on the importance of the role that these domestic workers have. So what is it about us as Kenyans and this particular role, and why is it that we will always find excuses for not paying what we know we should pay? And yet, in the places we work in, we're very adamant about what we consider to be our rights and what we should be paid. What is it about us? Because that's a question I'm asking.
Yes, it's, we view domestic work casually. Most of the people engage them the way we engage casual workers. They have no contract, and then they have no benefits. It is considered to be something that someone comes to do, the work that is done today. They go, maybe 2, 3, like Mama Fua. She will come 2 or 3 days to wash for you, probably to cook. So they continue being perpetually casual workers. And in a proper context, we need to contract our domestic workers, give them their entitlement in the contract, have a proper arrangement between an employer and an employee. But this conversation can only come up, labor is a tripartite space. Right. There is government, there is COTU, Federation of Workers, and then there is FKE, and others like KEPSA. Those represent employers. Until we all accept that we need to improve the situation of our domestic workers, and that an employer, we need also to define, this is something CT, I think, we need to define an employer. Who is an employer? Even in that domestic situation. Are you an employer? Many people don't think they are employers.
I am an employer, yes.
For the domestic worker, you are, isn't it?
It's not just domestic worker. I'm actually an employer of more than a domestic worker.
I know you employ more than. In this case, we are discussing about the domestic worker.
There's a reason
for example.
There's a reason why I'm diverting it.
Yes.
I am saying I'm diverting it because there are nuances to domestic work.
Yeah.
And this is what I was hoping we'd say. Many domestic workers live in the houses of the people they work for. Okay? So they argue that housing has been provided for them. Right? Food has been provided for them. How this is provided and the quality that's provided is a completely different discussion. But this is the argument that they have. So it takes me back to what you've just said. Definition.
Yes.
So, employer. I'm in the category of people who have somebody who comes maybe twice a week. Yes, I'm in that category.
Do you consider yourself an employer under that circumstance?
Yes, I am.
Now, have you given them a contract, for example?
To come, yes, I have a verbal one.
Oh, what are we saying, PS? Are we looking at a situation whereby the ministries is there an insistence? Is there an insistence? Is there an insistence by the ministry to say that if you are going to have somebody who is working in your home 5 days at least per week, and that you have them paid a monthly salary, that you must have a written contract with this individual about the work that they will be doing, job description, and then about what the remuneration is going to be?
Of course. Of course. But, we also, I want to concede one thing, that the way we perceive domestic workers, we do not strictly think they are workers.
No.
And in that situation, you don't consider yourself to be an employer per se.
Exactly.
And so this is what we need to redefine. And I thought if Kenya ratifies this convention finally, then we'll be forced to adopt international standards in dealing with domestic workers, as provided for in C-189. Yes.
So the reason why it cannot be professionalized at that level,
yes.
The reason why it cannot be professionalized at that level is because the overarching principle which Kenya would then lend to in terms of participation actually doesn't exist. Well, as of now, until there's a ratification of the same, it doesn't exist. So are we saying because that doesn't exist, you cannot then implement it at the local level because of that? Because what standards then are you applying when you say this? But we still do see that if today somebody who was in the employ of someone and they were not getting their minimum wage 15,000, if they bring themselves to the Ministry of Labour, for example, very often we do see then proceedings thereafter that then compel the the former employer to make this payment over years in lieu of reinstatement, for example. But are we saying that the ministry is streamlining these things and saying that this is the way it ought to be without that overarching principle that is going to be followed? How then do you do the two? Because this is an everyday issue. It's an everyday affair. Every day there's somebody who's asking the question, and they still come to the Ministry of Labour every time Labour officer is asking this, the other thing. How is it being streamlined without a guiding law?
Well, generally, what is happening is that when we receive complaints from domestic workers or any other category of workers, we assign labor inspectors to do that work. Those are trained labor officers. And therefore, they will look out for the employer and engage the employer, engage this other person. And then we mediate. Largely, our role there is mediation. That's what is currently happening. I would say the enforcement mechanism is weak, arising from the fact that we do not have enough officers to do this work. Number two is that labor offenses, which we used to prosecute, are no longer done by the ministry. DPP took away all powers to prosecute across different institutions in government. And so when DPP did that, when you take up a labor offense, when you do it, when you decide to take it to DPP, they don't consider it to be a serious offense, like murder, like rape. Yet to us, the Minister of Labour, this is a weighty matter. So we have since written to the new DPP. We have because in law we still have the minister still has the powers to appoint labor prosecutors to carry out prosecution of offenses that are connected to employment and the places of work. Yes.
You see, if we are going to streamline it, as you say, and we're going to get granular and particular about the demands, the requirements, and so forth, then one shouldn't forget casual workers who work in the industries. Because they are also an exploited lot.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
Please go ahead, Peter.
In fact,
yes.
Leave alone industries. One of the people or the institutions that are insulting, because it's not just exploiting, it is exploiting and insulting workers are county governments. And the 47 county government, I can tell you, and this is factual to the letter, at least every county in Kenya has over 1,000 casual workers that are not paid in time, that are not, at what point do you have a casual worker in a county getting annual renewals for 5 years without getting a permanent position? It is an institutional abuse of the law that if you work for a certain period for government or a certain institution, they should be able to engage you fully, because why are you a casual worker for 5 years in a county government? That is the case currently. I'll give an example in where I come in Kiambu. We have over 2,000 workers that in the last 1 year have been fired, as in their contract expires, nobody is renewing them. But new people and new faces continues to join government on the same things. You will find there are governors today who have direct positions provided for by SRC, but they choose to employ senior government officials on casual labor. I'll tell you, Bwana PS, a chief officer in a county is a reciprocal of a PS in national government. It's the same position in the county, but the roles are the same. They are counties, and again, I will always start with an example from home.
Why
From August last year, PS, all the chief officers in Kiambu County are being employed on monthly basis. Chief officer.
Monthly?
Yes. Monthly contract. This is the person who should have the authority to incur expenditure in a ministry. He's the person who needs to actually actualize policies in government. He has been given a contract of 1 month. 1 month. The governor has never advertises new constitution, advertises for this position, never hires.
Okay, Mushendu, so what's your question? What's your question?
So the question is that when we are talking about people abusing offices, the biggest abuser is not even the private sector currently. The biggest abuser is the 47 levels of government. What is the Ministry of Labour doing to, first of all, streamline county governments, because county governments are government institutions which must lead by example in terms of exercising labour laws to the letter?
Yes, very important discussion. I like this. We should have had even 4 hours. Because this is a very crucial subject matter. Let me speak to the issue of labor standards in terms and devolution. In terms of our constitution, labor standards, it was not devolved to the county governments.
Yes.
It under the 4th schedule of this constitution. I just wanted to make sure that my reading of it is correct. However, the failure in this case, what our role there as Labour Ministry is to advise. In the spirit of cooperation and consultation, is to advise the county government. But the people who have a mandate of dealing with the county executive is the county assembly. I'll say that as a former speaker.
Yes.
And during my time, I had a very active labor committee. There's a labor committee in every county assembly. It is that committee that should be asking the county secretary and the county executive and the county public service board, how is it that we will have chief officers on 1 month contract?
Yes.
Okay. There is a procedure in the County Governments Act that has been clearly outlined on how chief officers are supposed to be recruited. Those are statutory offices.
Yes.
So the County Assembly of Kiambu, in my view, is the one failing. However, there's a general problem with counties when it comes to how they treat their workers. I want to concede that we are currently dealing with the issue of healthcare workers, doctors, clinical officers. We are in mediation with the Ministry of Health here at the national level, Council of Governors, and of course, Ministry of Labour is the one that brings them together. The Ministry of Health nationally has aligned itself, but we are not getting much support from COG in that particular, in the issue of medical, the doctors, the clinical officers. Recently, I went for the AGM of clinical officers, and they told me of a situation where in one county, all clinical officers were dismissed one good morning by a governor.
Which is really wrong.
Just because.
Yeah.
And he's not the employment authority.
But now, in this situation now, my role there will be to advise the governor that this is not right. These people need to be treated this way. There's the Employment and Labor Relations Court.
Does that county have a board?
It has a board.
But the governor thinks he's the board.
Of course, the situation in many counties, sadly, because of weak oversight structures, is that governors are
cross-cutting,
are ruling supreme.
Yes,
they are not accountable to anybody. Okay. And so my appeal will be to the county assembly, who are elected by the people, to do oversight, to do legislation. Okay.
And you mentioned the Labour and
the Labour Committee, even here in Nairobi County Assembly. Yes, there is a standing committee of Labour in the County Assembly to deal with human resource disputes, issues. And I remember receiving, when I was Speaker, presiding over sessions where reports was being submitted after investigation, inquiry by that committee. Of the County Assembly. So it is the County Assembly, whether of Kisumu, Mombasa, Nairobi, whichever place, Kiambu, that needs to take up that issue. If they seek any support, I'll give them as the PS Labour. I'll send the technical officers to advise that committee, even to advise the county executive to do the right thing.
Right.
Yes.
Let's look at the ministry over the next 4 years and because now here we are now running into implementation. What are the plans as we wind down this conversation this morning? What are the plans over the next 4 years to make sure that a lot of the things that we speak of are streamlined? And what are you hoping as you come out on the end of 4 years that will be seen?
I will say that we have come up with a strategy on global labor migration for 2023 to 2027. I will share with you for purposes of information after the show. We also have the policy and also the bill now. Once it is enacted, it will be a law. All these are tools that will enable us to coordinate the labor migration sector in a professional manner. But other plans is we want to review the 5 labor laws. We want to modernize them so that they are up to the international standards. A lot of issues, and then we want to ratify the conventions that we are signatory to. For example, C-189 on domestic workers, C-190 on the elimination of violence and harassment. And this is why what you spoke to earlier on, Peter and CT, on the issue of exploitation of workers here, abuse. This is something that we as a society must confront so that we reduce that. During my vetting in Parliament, for example, Honorable Aladwa told me you have to remove officers here in Nairobi. They collude with employers, and so people here get exploited. And so we need to reduce those instances where our officers abet abuse of laborers and workers in this country. So it's just that I don't know whether I'll be in labor for long. That is dependent on the president. But if I'll be here until the end, I think the proverb by C.T. Muga of this morning will now be something that to look back to and say, I was in studio one time and this is what was said, and these are the results. So we are hoping for an improved work environment here in the country. We are also looking forward to reduced unemployment during our time in office. We also look forward to affording Kenyans protections, whether they are here at home or in the diaspora.
Indeed. Well, one can hope that if you're in labor for long, that we will birth this, results that you're talking about, and it will be a good thing to look at and grow, isn't it?
Yes, certainly.
Indeed. But I just want to thank you for being you've spirited run for 2 hours and being on the show this morning and talking to us about the plans for the ministry. It would be great to circle back and have a conversation with you over a shop, in the near future and see, okay, these things that you speak of, how far are we, and looking at progress in terms of how the one government approach is working, and then moving forward to see how the unemployment numbers actually go down. So thank you for being here this morning. It's been good to have you.
Thank you too for having me. I look forward to another session with you, maybe in 6 months.
Maybe in 6 months.
Just to review what we've discussed here this morning. By that time, I believe a lot of things will have been put in place.
Yes. Indeed. Thanks very much for looking at this hour. And as we come to the top of the hour, the FKE EYA Awards are happening this year on the 6th of October at the Safari Park Hotel. Employer of the Year, who is the one, in your opinion, who's been innovative in terms of implementing policies, systems and processes? The awards create a platform for identifying, recognizing and promoting excellence in corporate performance, people, central management and labor relations practices amongst employers in Kenya. Who is that person? You can make yourself known on www.fke-kenya.org and find out then who is that person. The EYA Awards are supported by Safaricom, GIZ, ILO, BAT, NCBA and NITA. Those awards take place on the 6th of October, and find out if you are the one, if your organization is the one that fits the bill. Kenya's biggest conversation continues after this hour. It's 9 a.m.
spice up your life.
Good morning, this is Newswire. Dennis Aseto. 3 Kenyans have moved to court on a certificate of urgency seeking to stop the National Dialogue Committee from conducting the ongoing bipartisan talks between Azimio and Kenya Kwanza. Isa Elanyi Chamau, Patrick Karani Ekirapa and Paul Ngwenyo Kirui have challenged the legality and constitutionality of the committee, whose formation they say contravenes various provisions of the constitution. They have also listed other reasons, including the use of significant public funds for a process not supported by the constitution, legislation or the standing orders of parliament. They also cite the omission of important stakeholders such as the Law Society of Kenya and civil society in general in the composition of the committee, otherwise known as NADCO. Political leaders allied to the United Democratic Alliance Party are gathering at the Bomas of Kenya grounds ahead of the party's National Governing Council meeting that is set to kick off any time from now, according to the party's Secretary General Cleophas Malala. The event will be presided over by the party leader, President William Ruto, and graced by Chairperson Governor Cecily Mbarire. It will see all elected governors, senators, MPs and MCAs under the UDA banner attend. Malala had Thursday led a delegation of leaders to assess the preparations for the party's National Governing Council meeting. Among the agenda at the forum include an address by President William Ruto and discussions on the planned party grassroots elections slated for later this year as efforts to create a strong party with national support intensify. Over 1,500 party members and guests are expected at the meeting, which comes in the wake of calls to have affiliate parties within the Kenya Kwanza coalition to dissolve. And public institutions in Kenya can now deliver their electronic waste to the ICT authority to minimize the adverse environmental impacts of e-waste while creating jobs. The authority targets to collect 100,000 devices from 284 public organizations, which include state corporations, universities and TVETs in this year's fiscal year. Institutions can deliver their e-waste to the National Refurbishment, Assembly and E-Waste Management Facility located at Supplies branch of Likoni Road in Industrial Area, Nairobi. Through a partnership with the National Environmental Management Authority, NEMA, and the Public Procurement Regulatory Authority, PPRA, ICTA, has so far collected 11,103 devices from 42 public institutions and tested 2,696 devices. Kilifi Governor Gideon Mung'aro has banned huge allocations of funds for training and meetings for projects so as to ensure money creates an impact on the targeted people. Mung'aro said it has come to his attention that a lot of money was being wasted on unnecessary trainings and meetings where people take away allowances and per diems, which end up not benefiting the desired people. Speaking during the official launch of the Conservation and Sustainable Management of Marine and Coastal Ecosystems project funded by Plan International aimed at addressing challenges facing coastal and marine ecosystems in Kwale and Kilifi counties, he said even donors should minimize expenditure on trainings as it consumed huge sums of money. Entire county government plans to adopt and promote the homestay concept in a bid to promote domestic tourism. This is according to County Executive Committee member for Tourism Angelina Odor. Odor said the concept allows visitors to visit and stay in local homestays and in the process learn and appreciate local culture. Addressing this year's World Tourism Day celebrations at Kamzungu village in Bondo sub-county, Odor said that already the county cabinet has approved the concept paper on the same. The CECM said that 22 homestays have already been identified and given a go-ahead to venture into homestay concept. She called on the locals to embrace the concept, adding that this will help promote the Luo culture. The occasion was also addressed by County Executive Committee members Sylvester Okoth of Agriculture, Edgar Otumba of Education and Grace Agola of Trade, among others. And Governor James Orengo's first budget in office realized an improvement in regard to on-source revenue performance. This is according to the latest report by the Controller of Budget that analyzed the budget performance of the 47 county governments for the financial year 2022-2023. The just released COB report indicates that Orengo's administration outshone his predecessor after his county government generated 508 million shillings in revenue. Of the amount, 402 million shillings is on-source revenue and 105.81 million shillings in appropriations in aid. According to the Controller of Budget, the amount represented an increase of 17% compared to 434.38 million shillings realized in the financial year 2021-2022. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseda. Good morning.
.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
If a lion shows you its teeth, it doesn't mean it likes you.
It doesn't mean it likes you. It won't start.
A liar calls as witness one who is either dead or far away. Say it in
Ben low, nin inte, nin there, ayu markati kadikta. You know this character called liar. He has disturbed people. So when you tell him who are your witnesses, he will take you to a place where it is difficult to verify.
For someone like me who sweats a lot, I cannot survive there. Sweating is biblical. Good. And he must blame it on Adam, not me. Because Adam messed up and he was told, "Now you fellow you, by the sweat of your brow, thou shalt eat."
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
If you go out of this country and come back the same person, then you have a problem. Buy land, 1 million. Put it there for 5 years. What's the purpose?
It'll have increased in value.
No, that's the thing. That's darkness. That's an eclipse. You don't do that.
I hope you don't believe that a hustler is a poor person or that all hustlers are poor. I've seen that conversation.
Tell us, who is a hustler?
So who's a hustler? Hustler is a person who is making a living through hard work.
Corruption in Kenya is a political accusation. The people who are actually corrupt are not pointed fingers at.
Kenya is not free. Kenya imeshikwa na mateka. It's under siege.
Have you seen that lodge on Nyeri Road? Very high fence. You can't even
Windows
sleep inside.
up near the ceiling.
Yes. And if you walk there at midnight, you see bats the size of cows.
And when it rains, it doesn't rain on that building.
Yes.
When you're at All Saints and it's raining, it doesn't rain on that building.
The things people will believe.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Okay, around about a few minutes after 9 o'clock, and there's traffic just in a few parts of the city today. I think traffic hour is going to come to an end much quicker than it does on most days. Outbound traffic is one we'll look at, and we're looking at that going on to Westlands towards the 187, and so there's traffic there. But coming into the CBD from the Thika Superhighway, that seems to be dwindling. Uhuru Highway is not doing too badly as you come off the Nyeri Stadium roundabout out towards the Haile Selassie Junction. CBD and then out towards Westlands, we'll see some of that. On Mombasa Road, it has not shown its head today at all. All right, coming from Cabanas towards North Airport Road out towards the junction of Outer Ring, we'll have a little bit of that here and there. Apart from that, I think we can get through it without too much of a headache. Want to keep things moving? Let's still try to do that as we talk on Spice FM KE on X.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start
9
your
minutes
day.
after 9 o'clock, and we're getting into the final hour of Kenya's biggest conversation this morning. It's Health Friday, and we're having a Health Friday conversation today about, well, maybe not too happy a topic, but an important one all the same. As we're getting into that, let me remind you about a conversation that's going to be taking place in the more, town word using a dialogue that takes place. The African regional judicial dialogue on transnational organized crime and illicit financial flows will take place in Kenya from the 3rd to the 5th of October 2023. It's going to focus on the role of courts in the prevention and response to transnational organized crimes and illicit financial flows. It's convened by the Kenya Judiciary Academy and its partners, and it will be officially opened by Chief Justice Martha Koome. It takes place in Mombasa on Tuesday, the 3rd of October until the 5th. And it provides a platform for policy leadership to improve international justice. That takes place, and you'll be able to catch the conference live, online, and on TV. Very important conversations to be had in that light. So you want to catch that. It's from the 3rd to the 5th of October. Finding out how countries with 21 African judges who will be in attendance over those 2 days. We're getting into the final hour of a conversation. Like I said, it's a Health Friday conversation. Dr. Maureen Owiti is in the studio already, and she's the head of reproductive health at the Kenyatta National Hospital. Dr. good morning.
Thank you so much, Du, and good morning to you too.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. It's the hot seat of the Situation Room, as you may be aware.
I'll cool it down.
Well, all right then.
Oh my.
We're talking about a hot topic today. It's maternal death, and unfortunately the numbers are high, maternal death, and one of the main causes of that, from what we are seeing, is actually postpartum hemorrhage. And it's a lot of medical jargon, as it were, but important. We'll talk about that as we get into it. But CT is going to welcome you to the hot seat with today's proverb.
Right. Proverbs for the whole of this week have been from the country of Kenya. I think you've heard of the country, haven't you?
Definitely one.
Yes.
At least one Kenya.
Yes, this is our final proverb. At harvest, you know how good the millet is. At harvest.
You're nodding. Dr. how does this resonate with you?
I think all these sayings, that it's not very direct, but it's like, I think the equivalent would be you reap what you sow. I don't know if that's what he's trying to say. So you know how good the millet is. So if you didn't go through all, because to harvest you must have planted, you must have weeded, you must have watered and sowed. And then it's only at that point, after doing all that work, and it's understanding it can fail. You get locusts, all of that. So I don't know if it's like you reap what you sow, but I don't know. CT.
It's actually your opinion that we wanted, and you have given us your opinion, and your opinion can't be wrong.
It
is your opinion.
So.
And in this case, it is an excellent opinion. And it's clearly thought out, and the response is very well executed. Thank you.
Thank you, CT. I feel honored.
Well, this week he's been giving out 11 out of 10 points. I don't know, maybe it's a Friday and it's the last Friday of the month, so maybe he'll give you 12. I don't know.
That is exactly what I'm going to do.
Voilà.
I'm going to give the good doctor 12.
12 points out of 10. Overachiever, aren't you? All right. Looking into this conversation and getting off to postpartum hemorrhage. When we hear it, it's very medical, and we're saying that this is the leading cause of maternal mortality in the country today. Then asking questions about what exactly is this when we talk. So the two things: there's maternal mortality. That seems kind of cut and dry. It's the death of women at birth, not when they're giving birth or when they have given birth, and you can maybe give a better definition of that? And then now, postpartum hemorrhage. What are we talking about when we're looking at these two issues?
Okay, so I think let's first just break down, because what we're very concerned about is women dying. So mortality is obviously when somebody has died. And the dictum is no woman should die while pregnant or giving birth or in the period afterwards. When you talk about maternal mortality, it's that whole spectrum from the time a woman conceives right up to delivery, and even it's called 6 weeks. I love Muslims. They have a very nice word for it, arubaini. I think Islam is very scientific. A lot of the things they do, you find, has physiology in it. So we find for the first 6 weeks after delivery, there's still those changes when the woman's moving from the pregnant state to the pre-pregnant state. So we call that the postpartum period. And it normally takes about 6 weeks or 42 days, so arubaini, as it would be in Kiswahili. So any woman who dies during that period for whatever cause will be considered having had a maternal death. Okay? So you're pregnant, you get an ectopic, you bleed, you're just 6 weeks pregnant and you unfortunately pass on. That'd be a maternal death. You have a complication after delivery, you got an infection.
Ectopic?
Yes.
What is it?
Sorry, an ectopic pregnancy is when a pregnancy is not in the uterus. So it can be in the tubes, it can be in the abdomen, it can be on the cervix. So it's when a pregnancy is not located inside the uterine cavity, okay? But because today our topic is on postpartum hemorrhage, let's run away from that for today. Okay. So again, we're just going back. You deliver, and the first 6 weeks after delivery, say you get an infection, and it's very severe, you get organ failure and die, it will also be considered as a maternal death. So if we now narrow down to the topic we're talking about today, the postpartum hemorrhage, it means the woman has given birth. So that's immediately after the birth of the baby. Okay? Any bleeding that occurs immediately after delivery of the baby and within the 6 weeks, after delivery, that would be considered postpartum hemorrhage. What we are mostly concerned about today, I think what people be more is in hospital, because it's something you cannot predict that is going to happen. There are people who have risk factors for bleeding after delivery. So you have somebody who has, say, a twin or a multiple gestation. I think when the era of fertility, I think though there was some octomom who I was told had a natural conception. I'm still trying to wonder how that. No, it was an IVF actually. No, it was an IVF octomom. So definitely, if you have high order pregnancies, so twins, triplets, quads, the uterus is very distended. So the leading cause of postpartum hemorrhage is when the uterus doesn't contract after delivery. So we call that atony. So the uterus is a muscle and it should contract. And when it does that, it stops. It's like it closes all the blood vessels and you don't bleed. Because remember, the uterus was a big thing carrying a baby. And it has to, God is so wonderful how he does things. So he releases, so immediately after delivery, the woman releases some hormones, which is going to make the uterus contract. And by doing that, she stops bleeding. So in some women, because as I said,
over a couple of days.
No, immediately.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. In fact, the majority postpartum hemorrhage is within the first 4 hours after delivery. So this is something that's happening live. It's very dramatic when you're just seeing that the woman has delivered. So the natural thing that's supposed to happen is the woman delivers, baby comes out, you deliver the placenta, and she's supposed to stop bleeding. And in nature, we have it that the woman has the hormones to do that. But again, unfortunately, in some cases, due to one reason or another, that doesn't happen.
What would be that one reason or another? What would cause the uterus to fail to contract?
So as I was saying, if it's over distended, like with twins, so it doesn't have the elasticity, power, the strength to contract so well. Maybe herself doesn't have enough hormones. to cause that to happen. So over-distension can be because of the multiple gestation. It can be because some people have more amniotic fluid than they should naturally. Then other people have other abnormalities. I think a very common disease is something like fibroids. So women with fibroids could have that type of problem. Then you have other causes of the postpartum hemorrhage, which is other than the atony. So you find like they get tears. So I think you've heard women after delivery. So the tear can be on the perineum, that is the outer place, outside, just around the vagina, or it can be on the cervix, and that can really cause very, very heavy bleeding. Another issue can be people have coagulation. So it's like in your blood system, you have factors that make your blood clot so that you don't bleed so heavily. So there are some people, by nature, they don't have enough clotting factors. So that would be another reason for it. So those are the big four reasons. You have your atony, you have your tears, you have your thrombin issue, and that those would be the reasons why someone is going to bleed. And if a woman is delivered by a skilled health provider, they are able to immediately detect there's a problem here, that the amount of bleeding she's having is not good enough, and act. And more importantly, I think, I don't know what the African saying would be, but in English, prevention is better than cure.
Ask the experts.
But again, prevention is always better than cure. So when a mother is delivered in a health facility or under the care of a skilled health provider, we normally do some actions to prevent the amount of bleeding after delivery. So immediately, we normally give remember we said that there's the hormones which are released. So normally give an injection. It's called oxytocin, and this will help the uterus to contract, again, reduce bleeding. You find not everybody is going to be able to get to a hospital. So in some countries, they do give midwives another drug that they can give the woman under the tongue called misoprostol, and that would also help the woman the uterus to contract and reduce the bleeding. So we are preventing bleeding. And then we have steps of how we try to deliver the placenta, to deliver it as quickly as possible, to all steps just to try to reduce bleeding. And that's the value of going to hospital to be delivered by a health provider, because one, they're going to prevent, and unfortunately, you can do all your preventative mechanisms. You put a seatbelt when you go on the car, but it's not going to necessarily prevent an accident from occurring.
Right.
So you've worn your seatbelt, you've gone to hospital, you've gotten a health provider to deliver you, you've gotten all the medication, but voila, we're still bleeding. So the beauty of having a skilled health provider available at your birth is that they're able to recognize this quickly and step into action to stop. So again, we add more hormones. We try to figure out what is the cause of the bleeding. When we figure out the cause of the bleeding, we put in interventions to stop the bleeding.
And do you have enough time? Do you have enough time at that point to find out what the issue is and then say, okay, let's go?
Yes. And as I've said, you're finding out as you're doing something to stop the bleeding. So it's not like they're going like, oh, what is the cause? What is the cause? We already have pre-planned actions that a woman's bleeding, we're going to do X, Y, Z. It's a protocol you institute as you're finding out what is the cause of the bleeding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, we are saying that maternal mortality is still pretty high.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yes.
What are the numbers that we're looking at now in terms of statistics?
So I'll give you in Kenya. In Kenya at the moment, for 2022, figures stood at about 364,000 deaths. Sorry, 364 mothers per 100,000 live births.
Oh,
Okay. Sorry.
Shocked.
It's 364 per 100,000 live births.
That's still high.
That's very, very high. Now, if we are to put it into context, which are the countries that have the lowest maternal mortality in the world? So we're talking about countries like Finland, Greece, Poland, and their figure is 3 per 100,000. So it's understanding, even in the high resource countries, you cannot 100% eliminate a maternal death. They still occur. However, 3 versus 364, I think that's it's more than what? It's about 1.2. It's 120% difference.
Yes, it is. Yeah, actually.
No, multiplied. You have to multiply by 120 to get that. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So 3 and getting to 364 over the same 100,000 is what we are looking at now.
Yes.
So it's quite a difference.
If you're to compare the two. But I'm very grateful because if you look at over time, with all these Millennium Development Goals and other Sustainable Development Goals, we have moved from figures of above 600,000 to 364, but we're still a long way because for the Sustainable Development Goals, we're aiming to reach a figure of 70 maternal deaths per 100,000 live births. So you can see we're still
far,
a very, very long way. And we just need to put in efforts to ensure that these deaths, because the saddest part about all of these is that if a woman is managed well, these deaths are preventable.
Now, within that statistic of 364 for every 100,000 live births, these mothers are dying, right?
Yes.
And we're saying within that, the major cause of death for them is this postpartum hemorrhage.
Okay, so it's one of what we call the big four.
Okay.
So, and it would account for about 30% of that figure. So that's really it's really a huge chunk of the cause of maternal mortality. So if you look at hemorrhage, it's really taking a big chunk, and that's bleeding. It's really taking a big chunk in terms of the maternal mortality.
Is every case of hemorrhage in a woman who may pass away preventable?
Pardon? Just repeat.
Is every case of hemorrhage that might occur in a mother at that point after birth preventable?
In a hospital setting with the right team, I would say yes.
Okay. So at what point then would we say that it has become so dangerous then that the life of this mother cannot be saved?
Okay.
If she has bled to some point where we say, okay, now this one, we're done.
Okay. So it's also understanding, like, I work at Kenyatta National Hospital. So this is a national referral hospital. So you find that we do have challenges. And one of the biggest challenges is what do you need when somebody's bleeding? What do you need? Why are they going to die? It's because they have loss of the blood. So what would be the treatment for that? It would be to replace the blood. Okay. So one of the things would be, can we ensure that blood banks across the county and across the country do have adequate supply of blood? So this for me is, I think, one of the reasons I'm also here, other than talking to government, but also just talking to the general population. If we have young people who are eligible to donate blood, why don't we say that every 3, even twice a year, I'm going to regularly donate blood just to help a Kenyan, because that unit of blood can save a life.
So okay, so what you're saying now is that we get to the point where it's danger zone. This woman could lose her life, but one of the problems being that there's not adequate in terms of supply to then be able to add to the blood in her system.
Yes.
So then we're now looking at a blood bank issue as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So those are one of the issues. But for me, this is for what can the common wananchi, because the beauty about being on a show like this is we're talking to Wanjiku, we're talking to Otieno, you're getting me? And what can Wanjiku and Otieno do? How can they play their part to reduce maternal mortality as we now go into what can government do? Okay. So I'm very happy that our current admin at COGS, through our president Kireki, to really have started this initiative of, we're talking about it. Let's talk about PPH. Let's reduce the number of deaths for PPH. So blood is just one postpartum hemorrhage.
I want to look at this.
Sorry, City.
I want to look at this 6-week period. By the time a mother, because we're saying in those 40 days, right? 42 days. Most likely 3 days after birth, a woman has gone home with her baby. But we're saying that from what you've said, there's still a chance that she could still bleed for a prolonged period of time that could eventually end in death.
Yes.
But that's a long time. She's been with her baby. This baby by now has reached its first stages of immunity. Something has started to occur that, they're developing. And one would say everything is okay. And we're looking at what types of numbers are we looking at for a mother who has gone home?
Okay.
She has then gotten into touch with her baby, really. And then we're saying it's still possible for you to die from a condition that came as a result of birth.
Yes.
It seems like such a long period to be able to say this is still a factor that could then bring about death. It breaks my heart.
Fortunately, for the mothers who leave the hospital, those figures are not very high, but we still do have such cases, and but the majority, these are things happen. This is something that happens around the time of the birth. So I'll just give you an example. When I finished obstetrics and gynecology, I worked in a rural community in Kilifi. So in Kilifi, you have the intrinsic problem of mothers have low blood levels, anemia.
Yeah.
This is the only place in the world you'll see some woman is going to the shamba and her blood levels are 2. That's her hemoglobin levels is 2, whereas I need above 10. In a normal patient.
Function normally.
Yeah. And she's going to work and she's going to the shamba and digging and she's working with a HB of 2. So you can imagine this woman gets pregnant, and comes to deliver. Is this woman going to be able to withstand even 100 mLs of blood loss? She can't. Her body can't. Now, then go back to the problems of Kilifi. They have their traditional midwives, mkunga. That's who she's going to deliver with.
Traditional birth attendants.
Yes.
Yes.
She's going to deliver with the mkunga in the village. By the time they realize this lady is having a problem and want to take her, it's uko deep uko, maybe in Bamba or somewhere like that. By the time they get to a health facility, this is maybe a dispensary that doesn't have facilities for blood transfusion. How long has that taken before they realized there was a problem? Then took her to the hospital, to the dispensary. Dispensary seeing we can't handle this, they call the district hospital, send us an ambulance or organize the relatives. How do they get this lady to an ambulance? So by the time this woman, from the time she gave birth, delivered, and got to the hospital where the Kilifi District Hospital, where we have facilities for blood transfusion, more than 4 hours have passed. And there's what we call the golden window. For bleeding after birth, you have 4 hours. If you have not started your intervention within those 4 hours, anything you do after that, you're just trying to...
It's futile.
You're just trying to do, because you can't just watch somebody die. But you're most likely not going to be successful.
Let's look at other interventions. Let's take a tea break. I think it's necessary at this point. A tea break with Assist Tea. And I want to offer you some of that today. CT is, feeling generous. Kurosoi South. It's just here in Kenya. Beautiful plains. I've seen the pictures in that district. There's the Kiptagich Tea Estates. And they produce this phenomenal, world-recognized tea. It's produced here in Kenya, different blends, different varieties, masala tea, purple tea, hibiscus tea, black tea, golden tea, green tea. At this point, they'll produce blue tea. Anyway, it's great stuff, fantastic blends. It's available for world export, but it's also available right here in Kenya. What you export is what Kenyans are drinking today, and it's available across all your supermarkets. And we'd like to give you some of that today.
Thank you. I hope it's hibiscus.
Well, I don't know what CT has up his sleeve. But he might do some magic.
Masala and golden tea.
I'll really appreciate it. Thank you so much, CT.
Assist Tea offering you a golden cup of tea for that break. All right. It's 26 minutes to 10 o'clock. We're continuing with the conversation about our Health Friday conversation with Dr. Maureen Owiti in the studio. We'll be back right after this.
Join the Employee of the Year Awards year that seeks to fit organizations which put people at the core of their businesses and have implemented policies, systems, and processes that create and sustain enterprise competitiveness, resilient productivity improvement alongside industrial peace and harmony. The awards creates a platform for identifying, recognizing, and promoting excellence in corporate performance, people management, and labor relations practices amongst employers in Kenya. If you have all this, then you are the one to be feted. The awards will take place on 6th of October at Safari Park Hotel, Nairobi from 6 p.m. For more information, check the Federation's website at www.fkekenya.org. Air Awards, supported by Safaricom, GIZ, ILO, BAT, NCBA, and NITA.
Some very nice, mature music.
It really took me back to my days, and I can just feel young again and enjoy the vibes.
Spice.
I'm a big listener of Spice FM.
You play the best music.
This is 94.4. Business News with Spice FM.
I'm Dennis Aseto. At least 7 out of 10 businesses in Kenya have expressed confidence in digital payment solutions despite an increase in taxes, according to a new report. An assessment contained in the report dubbed The Future of Finance listed ease of transacting and record keeping among key drivers of digital payment despite a 5% increment in excise duty. Dentsu CEO Samantha Kipuri added that the adoption of emerging frontiers by financial institutions has further enhanced the uptake of digital payment systems. Financial analysts lobby the Institute of Certified Investment and Financial Analysts has opened a new college in Nairobi's Kasneb Towers to offer courses in investment, finance and related disciplines. The institution, which will start admitting students next month, says the program seeks to fill gaps in Africa's investment and financial analysis sectors. The institution will also offer online classes that are approved by the Technical and Vocational Education and Training Authority and Kasneb. Listed Total Foods company Unga Group Limited has welcomed the cabinet approval to operationalize the recently promulgated Strategic Food Reserve Regulations 2023, terming it as a step in the right direction. The operationalization of the regulations, Unga Group Managing Director Joseph Choge said, will provide a strategic avenue to enhance national food security ideals while strengthening the local food commodity market. The operationalization of the National Cereals and Produce Board Regulations 2023 with a base stock greater than 90,000 metric tons or 3 months national food requirement of scheduled agricultural produce, Choge said, will help to provide price stability for staple foods. China's Baidu rolled out its ChatGPT rival Ani to the public in a major leap for the country's tech sector as it aims to cash in on artificial intelligence gold rush. The Chinese government introduced fresh regulations this month for AI developers, aiming to allow them to stay in the race with the likes of ChatGPT, Meta, OpenAI, and Microsoft while tightly controlling information online. AniBot is the first domestic AI app to be fully available to the public in China. It is not available outside the country. For Spice Business, I'm Dennis Aseto.
Spice FM Business. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4
is around postpartum hemorrhage, and we're looking at extensive or excessive bleeding in new mothers, brand new mothers, essentially, with Dr. Maureen Owiti from Kenyatta National Hospital. As we went to the break, just looking at some of these issues and asking, so is there anything like predisposition towards excessive bleeding after birth in any woman?
Definitely you have, like I think I mentioned, the people who have problems with bleeding disorders.
Yes.
Yeah. So those are people, if you are aware they have a bleeding disorder before, you would definitely be more alert about that. And we talked about our high-risk mothers, multiple gestation, we call it polyhydramnios, when they have too much fluid in the abdomen, anything that's causing the uterus to distend more than it should during the pregnancy. So you have high-risk mothers. Having had said that, even in somebody with no risk factors, they can still get bleeding after delivery. So that is a problem with the PPH, as I called it, the postpartum hemorrhage for short. Okay, and you cannot predict who will and who will not get the PPH. You can be like, these people are more high risk, so you're going to have your antennas up, but there's somebody you don't expect at all, so, and they still get PPH. So for us, it's every woman. In fact, like I tell women when they come to the clinic, you're the most dangerous person walking on these streets of Nairobi until you finish your wikisita yako is when I start saying, okay, hallelujah.
This is after birth. Okay. You've brought up something interesting, and you talk about, look, we're talking about this thing. We want to make people more aware, right? So let's park that. We've also talked about the fact that you need to have resourced medical facilities to then be able to cite an issue and then to be able to manage and handle the issue if we see now excessive bleeding that might come from a problem, right? Park that. We know that when this child, because we're talking about a 6-month, it's a neonate, we're talking about little babies, if they lose their mother at that point, they're losing a host of things. Their access to nutrition, that's vital at that point. A mother, a parent, essentially. And then, that first port of nurturing has gone. So we're saying that as we're talking about these issues, we're also looking at children then who then will have to grow without their mothers should the unfortunate event of death occur. So even as we're talking about these matters, are we talking all across ends? Because we're saying, look, essentially what we're saying is, can we fund these facilities? Can we ensure that the human resource element is there? Because you've told us that all of them are preventable if we have the right resources in place. If we're doing all of these things, then what we are doing is that we are preventing these children later on from getting into a situation where they'll have to grow up in a lot of cases without a parent or without one. Okay. Is that the conversation that we should be having?
I think it's a conversation we should be having, because the moment this neonate doesn't have their mother, what are their risks? One, their first risk is death. These babies die because you don't have the right nutrition. And we all know, it's been proven time and time again, the best nutrition for the newborn baby is their mother's milk, breast milk. Okay, so you're moving this child from not having access to breast milk unless they're able to get a surrogate for that. But if not, what are they going to take? And the moment you start giving them alternative feeds, you're having risk of, one, malnutrition. And with the malnutrition, they get sick. And these babies, small babies, don't withstand illness very well. So again, increasing their chances for death. So even a baby that grows up without their mother, making it later on in life is a miracle. And then we go about the breast milk. Your brain development and at that stage it's very critical when you've just been born, is very dependent on the type of nutrition you get. So you have a malnourished baby who is not getting, so if they do survive, you understand, they're also having risks of having improper or inadequate brain development. Again, minimizing their chances of how productive they're going to be later on in society. You could have had an Einstein being born, and we're reducing him to somebody who will just be able to just do the normal things just to get by. So those are the challenges. But for us, I think you've mentioned very important things, and I think we really, really have to belabor on healthcare financing. Kenya is a signatory to the Abuja Declaration. Okay? Abuja Declaration, home.
Yes.
But I know you chose us, so it's okay.
Let's talk about that.
Okay? member states said they would give 15% of their national budget towards healthcare. Okay? The best we've gotten is about 11%. So still a deficit of 4%, but those are huge figures.
Why was 15% the magic percentage?
It has just been shown that if you're able to put enough resources in healthcare, your impact, if they're well utilized, I think some of the challenges we also have in the country is you can come up with the 15%, you actually get it, but if you don't put it into the right programs, you won't get the outcomes that you want. But it has been shown countries that do put significant inputs into their healthcare they reap the benefits. I think you told us what?
You wait for the harvest.
The harvest.
I'm paraphrasing. The harvest tells you the whole story.
You understand? So that's one of the inputs. Again, what is another input in healthcare? It's your human resource factor. Okay? So we have several challenges.
So the human resource factor is a deficit.
We're in a very strange times. Okay? This is when I graduated, okay, from med school and finished internship. My problem was not if I have a job. My problem was, where was this job going to be? Okay? Right now, we have, from your clinical officers to your nursing officers to your doctors, this is the first time we have doctors are actually unemployed.
Okay. Which means, are we suggesting that we have more doctors than we need?
It's not that we have more doctors than we need. We have situations whereby in facilities, they don't have adequate doctors, but they are not employing the doctors.
And why aren't they employing? And yet we keep churning out doctors every single year. We keep churning out clinical officers every single year.
This will be at policy level, and these are things that need to be addressed. That why do we have healthcare professionals who are available, and yet we have facilities that need these healthcare professionals, and there's a disconnect between the two. Then we have the opposite problem, like just say with, again, across healthcare professionals. Right now, if somebody has a dream of working abroad, the best profession I'll tell you to go into is either medicine or nursing. Okay? We are having a massive brain drain, okay? And more so among our nursing colleagues. And this is something we have to look at very, very keenly, because your healthcare, who is your primary healthcare giver? It always starts from the nursing. Now, if you don't have adequate number of nursing, because who's telling me, like we're talking about postpartum hemorrhage.
Yes.
Yeah. I've delivered the baby. I went to see somebody else who has remained with the patient. It's the nurse
who's doing routine checks.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're having more nurses, fewer nurses, so like the ideal in a maternity setting is I should actually have 2 nurses per patient when they're in the delivery ward.
Okay.
Now, if I'm not able to keep those ratios, it means that we're not going to recognize our problems in a fast enough time. If we don't recognize a problem quickly, it means time. And remember we talked about the golden hour, okay? You don't implement your interventions in a timely manner, then your outcomes are more likely to be bad, despite having gone to a hospital. So it's not just being a hospital is not just a building. A hospital is a combination of all those factors. You need the building, you need the equipment, you need the manpower, okay? And by the way, not just manpower, you need motivated manpower to do their work, okay? So it's a challenge, and those are things whereby we have to look at it. So in terms of the amount of money we're putting into healthcare, because unfortunately, good healthcare, excellent healthcare costs money. Okay? So if you look at countries like that, Finland, you go to places like Switzerland, how much money does it cost you to get anything? The sums they talk about, you look at them, you're like, but what is the type of health care they are getting?
Absolutely.
You understand?
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing what the access they have, but they pay for it. They pay for it.
You see, this is the thing, Dr. And the question is, it sounds almost like a silly question, but can it happen here? Can it happen? Because it hasn't. So one must ask that, is it possible for that kind of healthcare that we're talking about to happen here? Abuja Declaration, yes. Everybody came and said, yes, we'll do it, 15%. How many years later, that is yet to happen, you know? Because on whose ears must this fall? For me, one death, it doesn't matter who it is, one death that can be prevented, that occurs, is one death too many.
That's true.
And what we're saying here is that you can prevent. Number 2, everybody said that they will work towards making that happen. Number 3, we're saying that of all the mothers who die, that a certain percentage of them die because of this thing that can be prevented. So on whose ears must this fall? Because it seems that if death is happening, that's still not a thing that is able to get into the minds of people that we must do something about it. I don't know what worst thing ought to happen in order for us to say, okay, let's take this thing seriously.
Okay. I think you should be an advocate,
He is an advocate.
And be in that space.
For maternal health.
Yes. Okay. So it's just for us to continue knocking doors, trying to talk to the policymakers and see how do we reach the highest office in this land. I think we all know the highest office in this land is the president. So it's just how to get that information out there and try to convince people when budgets are being made that this is the type of money we need in healthcare.
Can it happen?
Where there's a will, there's a way. The issue is whose will. We have to be able to influence the people who have influence where those decisions are being made.
What's to stop? So let's look at now, coming back to physiology. A woman who would have bled extensively when she had one child, is she then predisposed to the same if she has another child? And is there ever any advice to say, well, we've been through this traumatic situation and you survived it, are we going to advise you not to have children in the future? What happens there?
Okay, so as healthcare providers, you're always caught in the middle between a person's will and their rights, okay, and what is good for them. And you have rightly put it, that somebody who has had heavy bleeding, I don't know what it is about obstetrics. So obstetrics is the management of pregnant women, that if someone has a certain complication during their first pregnancy, they're very likely to have a similar complication in subsequent pregnancies. So we have to warn the mother that, look, you did have this incidence of PPH. Unfortunately, you were able to survive. We can't tell her, don't have another child because there's a risk of getting PPH. What we can tell her is to ensure that when she's giving birth, she's in a hospital and she really emphasizes that I had a bleeding problem during my last delivery, so that the healthcare providers are having that high index of suspicion and are already putting in measures to reduce bleeding during that delivery. I've found whenever you're prepared for a situation, somehow things just go smoothly. But when you're not prepared for the situation,
can go belly up.
It can become very ugly.
You know, if you look at the Kenyan budget for health, it's always been on the increase. There's a time it increased almost twofold.
No,
but there's a time in the past, we're talking about 2010, 2012, and then coming into this 2020 onward movement. But now, the budget for 2022, 2023, 2024, there's been a cut. It's a 5.6 billion cut. Now, what does that represent?
But one of the issues I've had with that, and I think I've mentioned here before, is that at 2010, when we promulgated the new constitution, we devolved health and left, I think, level 6 hospitals upwards to the national government. But what would surprise you, say, in any city, look at the budget of 2012-2013 up to the budget of 22-23, the national government budget for health continues to increase. It has never, for all those years it went up, but the responsibilities were devolved to counties. Officers were seconded to county government. In this effect, the people who have suffered most is Nairobi, Kiambu and Kakamega. They have received the biggest number of secondment. But the resources to pay these people, and that is the reason why you are complaining there, was left up by the national government. What is the rationale in allocating more funds to national government when more responsibility has been devolved to counties?
It's puzzling. I honestly don't understand.
I also don't understand it.
Because when they talk policy, the policies we already have. So even if it's creating new policies, well, how much does it cost? I mean, what you're doing is looking at the situation that you have the data. It's already there. And determining the best way to move forward. That's really in the essence of a policy. It's puzzling, and I can't even think. I have the closest, the foggiest idea of how to look at it. But what I find even more puzzling is now, with all the healthcare needs that we say we have, in addition to what we've already said, you have a reduction. So now, what exactly are we saying?
I would be interested if we had a reduction and an increase to counties. Because the only thing counties receive for hospitals in their counties are what we call conditional grants.
Yes.
And they are only limited to level 5 hospitals. So if there was a reduction in the national government and an increase on conditional grants to county, then that is something we can actually, it is a plus. But now, we have a reduction from the national government budget and nothing added to the county government. So there is an issue there.
It's completely puzzling. And also, whenever we talk about the budgets and the inadequacy thereof, one doesn't hear, or it isn't explained or documented, the commensurate utilization of what is actually given. We are told it's inadequate. Yes, that we understand. But what has been done with what is being referred to as inadequate is also not clear.
Can I jump on that? And, even so now asking the question here that, because one of the things we talked about is adequate resources to then now stop this hemorrhage in all areas from happening. What percentage of women at that birth state have access to a properly resourced medical facility at any level? Because then that could give rise to this argument where we say fund the thing. Because are we saying that are they in the majority, women who don't have access to a properly equipped medical facility? Is that what we're saying right now?
Yeah.
If someone is delivering in a dispensary that has one healthcare provider who is the person who is doing clinic for immunization, the same person doing blood pressure for whatever, what exactly
everything else medical.
What exactly are we talking about? Okay, so it's a challenge, and the challenge cuts across, and devolution is one of the factors. I think there are many good things that have come with devolution, but there are also many ills that have come as a result of devolution. So it's like a double-edged sword.
I think what you are failing to say, healthcare is one of the things.
Healthcare is one of the things I feel should not have been devolved at present. It's something long-term when our democracy is, we say we're mature, but I don't know.
Let's say when it's mature.
I think the major...
Yes.
The major...
And you find you have very interesting decisions. And I'm not saying that, but as I've said, healthcare, it's what you put in is what you're going to get out.
At the end of the harvest, you'll see the million.
You find that. What has devolution done in healthcare? A governor would rather hire a lower cadre.
Yeah.
Okay. Yet there are certain jobs which can only be done by certain people.
Individuals, yes.
But he'd rather have the lower cadre, reason being the cost. He's controlling the wage bill.
Purse, essentially.
The wage bill. But are you going to get the output
that you're looking for?
No, I actually,
so for me, it must be, I think, if it's going to remain devolved, for a governor to run, say, a district hospital, he must be told that for him, he must have X number of consultants, X number, and be given the numbers so that it's not them choosing who they're hiring.
Dr. Maureen Owiti, who is the head of reproductive health at the Kenyatta National Hospital, thank you for being here this morning. It's a conversation that must continue. Thanks for being here on the Situation Room this whole week, folks. Take a cuppa, assist tea as you get into the weekend, and let's talk again 6 a.m. on Monday.
Spice up your life.
Good morning, this is Newswire. Dennis Aseto. NARC Kenya leader Martha Karua has responded after former IEBC commissioners Chebukati